my face right next to the juvenile face in my profile picture. So that's pretty much it, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, one more question. Where'd you get the name Johnny Two Bears from?
You know, that actually, when I first got started doing this, there was a guy, an older guy that had been doing this for a long time. And he told me that since you're doing this on your property, you don't want to use your real name. Well, my first name's Jonathan. Well, my wife and I went and got the 23andMe done. It was actually kind of funny because she bragged the whole time we were married that she was Native American.
Okay.
And we get all that back and come to find out she's not Native American at all, and I am. So we told the kids that, and we had some property about 45 minutes from my house that we went camping at and everything, and the kids were having fun with that information, and they were giving out Native American names, and mine was Chief Two Bears, is what my kids started calling me. So
that's a cool nickname, man.
Yeah, man. So I just using my first name and then Two Bears, and that's it.
Nah, that's
awesome.
Where that came from. Your kids contributed to it. That's cool, man. That's super cool.
Yeah, that was their idea.
Well, all right, buddy. I appreciate you joining me, man. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I need you guys to head on over. This is Bigfoot weekend. And I know you guys are getting slammed with a lot of content, but it's important that you go on over, subscribe, and show some love. And if you have any sightings in your area that you want to report, it sounds like their team has everything in order for them to take your sighting and catalog it. Like a lot of people call themselves researchers. And then I'll ask them, and I'll listen to them, or I'll ask them, well, how do you keep up with the sightings? And they don't have anybody that catalogs things. So it's really important to understand and discern between who's actually a real researcher and people who proclaim to be researchers. And these guys have it all together. And I'm just excited that you joined me, brother. I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you giving me a chance to talk, man. And that's a big compliment, and I appreciate it.
Nah, man, you're more than welcome. We'll be doing more later, buddy. Trust me.
Sounds good.
In the heart of the night, when curiosity becomes your guide, Dark Waters channel is your gateway to the stories untold. We rule the late night on YouTube, where each story is an adventure, and every listener is a voyager. Embark with us on journeys where the end is only the beginning. Dark Waters channel, explore the unexplored.
Your heart, keep it in your pocket for safekeeping. Don't ever let nobody be the reason you throw it out, you stop caring about it. Don't let your head get in the way, can't be defined by your mistakes. You know you try really hard, but sometimes you fall, sometimes you fall.
My whole life I've been petty. Picked up the trade as a kid. You see, growing up I was small and I got bullied. But I was smarter. So I would outthink the bullies. Get them to fight each other and then sit back and watch. I remember one of the kids that used to bully me had an accident on his bike. You see, he and his friends built a ramp and this fool decided to jump it. And all of the kids were standing around watching him. He made an outfit with a cape and all. And understand, my generation is long before any of the safety equipment that the modern generation had. There were no safety helmets, no knee pads, no elbow pads, none of that. So he's there on his bike about 20 yards away from the ramp and he's hesitating. Remember, this is the kid who used to bully me. So I start to cheer him on, getting the other kids to cheer him on as well, putting gas in his tank. Now, looking at the ramp, the angle, the support, it was way too high. Definitely, absolutely no way in hell he was safely jumping this ramp. And sure enough, this fool takes off riding full speed, hits that ramp, the bike shoots straight up in the air, flies from under his legs. He falls from 8 feet in the air, slamming, landing on the back of his head. Now he's on the ground bleeding and screaming. All of his friends take off running and leave him, and I'm the only one standing there. He's saying, help me, please help me. Remember, I told you that I was petty. So I reach out my hand pretending like I'm going to pick him up, and when he reaches for my help, I jerk away and tell him, listen, you should have thought about all this bullshit before you decided to bully me. Now, a few days later, I see him at school. His head is swollen. He's got stitches. He's angry because I didn't help him. And remember, he's bigger than me. So that day, he whooped my ass. And I didn't see it as a problem. Yeah, he was punching on me. I blocked a few of them, curled up into a ball. But at the end of the day, his head was cracked open, and all I had was a few minor bruises. Anyway, I was 18 when I had my Dogman encounter. I'm on my way home from school. Springtime. It was right before sundown, and the road I had to walk home had train tracks on the right and woods on the left. That evening, a train had stopped on the tracks loaded with these gigantic logs. I remember for the first time feeling like there was no escape as I walked down this roadway. And I don't want to confuse you, there was no reason for me to feel scared at the moment. It just dawned on me that if someone came speeding down that roadway, my only option was to run off into these deep woods or to try and climb up a train cart full of logs. Anyway, I'm walking along, right, when I suddenly get the feeling that I'm being watched. Then I hear this quick scratching sound like something climbing on top of those logs. And this werewolf literally comes flying down onto the road, looks at me as it's landing, and I'm terrified, standing there frozen in place. It squares up to me, stretching out his chest, his arms wide open. Look at me like, boy, if you don't get away from me, I'm gonna kill you. Listen to me, everything inside of me wanted to run. But I knew growing up in that area that you never ever run from a predator. And all I could think to do was to bow. So I bowed my head in submission. And it slowly walked away. Now fast forward, I get home, tell my mom what happened. She thinks I'm crazy. I try to tell my dad, but he's watching a football game. So I go to bed with no dinner, scared out of my mind. 2 days later, I'm walking down the same road. Keep in mind, this time there's no train, but I'm terrified, and I hear this truck coming up behind me. Looking over my shoulder, it's my sworn nemesis, the kid who cracked his head like an eggshell. He has this Ford pickup truck full of people, and as they pass by, they throw small rocks at me, cursing me out, calling me a wimp. He's hanging out of the driver's side laughing, calling me a loser. His girlfriend is in the passenger seat, egging him on. Now once they get past me, I grab the biggest rock I could find and chuck it at his truck. Now I threw it not thinking that I was actually going to hit someone, more as a way of making myself feel better about the situation. But I ended up hitting one of the boys riding in the bed of his truck. Now they stop, put the truck in reverse, and head back my way. So I take off into those woods, running my tail off, jumping over down trees, tripping, falling. And I can hear them running behind me, following me through the woods, screaming, "We're gonna beat your ass when we catch you." Now, understand, I was taught that the shortest distance between two spaces is a straight line. So in the woods, I started running zigzags, just random zigzag patterns, hoping that they wouldn't catch me. And it was doing one of these zags that I noticed the claw marks on the tree. These huge, long claw marks. And instantly, I stopped. Because now I'm remembering what I saw going into these woods. I have a decision to make. So I'm saying to myself, do I take this ass whooping, or do I keep running into these woods and possibly run into that creature that I saw on the road? I tell myself, no, we're not going any further. We're just going to have to take this beating. So now I've turned around and I'm making a beeline straight for their direction. My plan was to scream and just keep running past them. Well, that plan didn't work because I get tackled by the same guy that I hit with the rock in the bed of the truck. Now I'm being held down while he's screaming for the others to come over in his direction. Looking at me, he says, "Boy, you got to be stupid. You ran straight into me. What the hell is wrong with you? You know we about to beat your ass." So I try to tell him, there's something in these woods worse than you think, and I believe that we're in its house, so we need to go. But he punches me in the face, laughing at me, and calls for the others to come over. When the rest of them arrive, he says, "This limp dick bastard right here believes there's something in these woods." Now, imagine a scene. I'm laying on the ground. He's got me pinned down. They have me circled like hyenas, and they're laughing at me. Understand, I'm there pleading with them, saying, "Listen, I know we don't like each other. I know y'all gonna whoop my ass. That's fine. But whatever you do, please, let's get out of these woods and get back to the road." And no, just like a pack of rabid hyenas, they're just laughing at me. So I'm squirming on the ground, break loose, try to get away, only to be kicked in the head. Now I'm dazed, got white spots in my vision, and they think it's funny until they hear the growl. And I know for a fact they heard that growl because I heard it, and they started to curse and swear, saying, "What the F is that?" So now all of their attention turns from me into the woods. And to be clear with you, we were deep into these woods. I ran at least 400 to 450 yards before I saw those claw marks and decided to turn around and run back in that direction. And these woods themselves, if you keep going further back, they connect to this ridge line that goes up and down towards a river. On the far end, close to that ridge, is where the logging operation was going on. Now, back on my feet, I step away, getting out of the circle they had me in, and say, "Look, man, for real, let's go. We can sort all this out another day. I'm scared. Let's go." Now pause right here in the story. Was I scared? Absolutely. No doubt about it. But it was one thing I knew. One thing I knew for sure about my bully, and I knew him better than he knew himself, was the fact that he could not stand being afraid. And he couldn't stand the fact that anybody around him would think that there was something that he was afraid of. So when I said that I was scared, deep down inside, I knew that that would push him to go deeper, move further into those same woods. And exactly as I predicted, he did it. Now, him and his crew have completely turned their attention away from me, and now they're moving deeper into the woods, trying to figure out what made the growl. Stepping further away from them, I said, "Listen, I wouldn't do that if I was you." But nope, they're not listening. So now I'm putting more space between me and them. 50 yards, 60 yards. They're back over there by that tree with the claw marks on it, talking. And I'm steady backing away, when out of the corner of my eye, I see that same werewolf thing down on all fours. It's circling around them to get behind them. And I'm like, oh shit. It takes this quick glance at me, but keeps moving closer and closer to them, low to the ground, almost like it's crawling, head swaying back and forth, left to right. Now I'm angling myself 45 degrees away from everything. I want to turn and run, but it's too soon. So I slowly back away till I'm damn near 120 yards away from them. And you can barely see bodies through this thick brush and trees. Then I turn and run, hauling ass back to that roadway, pick up my school bag, and as I'm standing there catching my breath, I hear screaming. Even from that distance, as deep as they were into those woods, you can tell whatever the hell was happening wasn't good at all. So I run as fast as I can all the way home, get inside, go straight to my room. 6 hours later, the sheriff is at our front door. My parents are pissed, and he's asking me questions about what happened in the woods. So I tell him the exact story. I'm walking down the roadway. They pull up, throwing rocks and cursing at me. I grab a rock, throw it at them, run into the woods. They chase me into the woods. I see these giant claw marks on the trees. They surround me, beat me up. Then something growls. I take off running, get back to the road, get my school bag. I hear them screaming like something is murdering them, and I run home. So now the sheriff is pissed, asking me why I didn't call and tell him what was going on and try and get the kid some help. And I tell him, listen, it's none of my business what happened to them, because had the shoe been on the other foot, I promise you these kids would have done nothing to help me. Angrily, the sheriff tells me that if there's any criminal charges that he can press against me, he will, and demands that I come with him down to the station and file a report as to what happened. So my dad and I get in the car, follow him back to the police station, and that ride to the police station is a whole nother story because my father is pissed off. He tells me that I embarrassed him because the sheriff came to his door asking questions about an incident that he knew nothing about. And I try to remind him I had just tried to explain that whole situation to them a few days before when I came home scared out of my mind, and neither him nor my mother believed me. So there was no reason for me to tell him anything else because he didn't believe me the very first time. And there was no reason for me to call the sheriff and tell the sheriff that a werewolf had attacked kids in the woods because he would have thought that it was a prank call. The only logical outcome was to let it play out, and if the sheriff came, explain all of it to him then, because now he would have evidence of the situation. Keep in mind, I got my level of intelligence and logic from my mother and not my father. One of the many things that my father resented about having me as a son. Anyway, now we get to the police station, hop out, follow the sheriff inside, and when we walk into the station, guess who's sitting in the lobby? Mr. Egghead, my nemesis. And you can tell looking at him that whatever happened in those woods, oh boy, it had to be bad. Moments later, the sheriff, my father, go into the office to talk in private, and I sit down right next to him. And I say, man, are you okay? But he's gone. I mean, space cadet gone. This blank stare in his eyes. And that's when he tells me what happened. He starts by saying, you know, this is all my fault. Had I just left you alone, drove past you, none of this wouldn't have happened. We would have never been in those woods. She would never be missing. He would never be hurt. Nothing would have happened. Now get this, after I backed away from them, they were all standing there, staring at the claw marks on the trees, making fun of it, trying to figure out what it was. And he says the next thing he knew, his friend Eddie. Now pause. Eddie was the guy I hit with the rock. Eddie was the guy who tackled me and punched me in the face. That's Eddie. The next thing he knew, Eddie was flying through the air, and a giant wolf was biting his arm, trying to pull him off into the woods. He takes this long, awkward pause and says, blood, man, blood was everywhere, man. He says that's when he took his knife out, ran over, and tried to stab it. But the wolf let Eddie go and then stood up on two legs. Now, according to him, from that moment on, he just remembers bits and pieces of what happened, taking off his shirt, wrapping it around Eddie's arm, getting up only to see that everyone was gone. Now, according to him, from that point on, he just remembers bits and pieces of what happened next, taking off his shirt and wrapping it around Eddie's arm, then getting him up and trying to get him back to the road only to see that everyone else is gone and hear his girlfriend screaming in the distance, him running full speed in the direction of the screams and never finding her. Honestly, for the first time ever, I felt sorry for him because he was having a full mental breakdown, saying, had I just left you alone, man, had I just left you alone and been nice to you, none of this would ever happen. It's all my fault. All I had to do was just be nice. It was right then and there in that moment that I noticed the blood all over his shoes, all over the lower parts of his jeans. But honestly, what do you tell a person in a situation like that? A few minutes later, I'm called into the sheriff's office. He's sitting behind his desk. My dad is sitting on the other side, and I sit down next to my father, and he asks me if I want to press charges for being kicked in the head. Now, my father presumes to speak for me and says, no, Sheriff, we don't want to press charges. We want to do everything we can do to get out here and try and find this missing girl. But I interject, and I tell him, yes, I do want to press charges. Now, the sheriff is looking at me like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And I repeated, yes, I do want to press charges. They chased me down into those woods, put my life in danger. He kicked me in the head, and they all admitted it to you. I want to press charges. That's when the sheriff puts down his pen and says, son, that boy who kicked you in the head is 2 towns over in the hospital. He's probably going to lose his arm. Don't you think that losing an arm is a big enough price to pay? And I tell him no. They've been harassing me and bullying me my entire life. I'm pressing charges. That's when my father looks at me like he's disappointed, gets up, and walks out. And when it's time to leave, I go outside and realize that he's left without me. So I turn and go back inside and ask the sheriff for a ride home. He's pissed and says all his deputies are out looking for the girl. Now I have to walk back home. It's 10 p.m. and I gotta walk down that same damn road. Was I scared? Absolutely. Scared out of my freaking mind. But I walked it. And when I get home, my dad is sitting on the sofa. He's like, I figure since you're a man now and you know it all, you could find your own way home. Listen, I knew he was trying to get a rise out of me. But I also knew that being 18 years old, it was my decision to make. So I didn't respond. I just went upstairs to my room. Days went by. I mean 5, 6 days. And there was no sign of her. Listen, the school was in an uproar. There were rumors that she was raped and murdered. It was getting all the way out of hand. But by the time graduation rolled around, she was declared officially missing. And people seemed to forget about the whole situation. But I was never able to forget about it because my father stopped taking me places. I had to constantly walk down that same road to and from school every day. And I want to be clear with you, I never saw it again after that. But every now and then, I would get that feeling that I was being watched. And when I felt that way, I showed respect to this thing. I would turn to the wood lines, bow my head, and say, listen, it's just me. I'm on my way home. When I graduated, I left that town. And my mother and I still speak, but my father and I are estranged. According to him, I'm to blame for what happened to those kids. But the truth is, I was a trapped baby. My mother got pregnant before they were married, trapping him in the relationship. By her being pregnant, that forced them to get married because in those days, that's just what people did. My father resented me. To him, I symbolized nothing more than one giant mistake in his life. And then the fact that I took the intelligence traits from my mother as opposed to the athletic traits from him really made the situation worse. Now, that was my Dogman encounter, and truthfully, it was my life story. Today, I have my own family, and my son knows he's loved, and so do his siblings. As for my nemesis, he was never the same. That day in the woods changed him forever. We actually were at college together for a while. I helped him with books, and he helped me meet my wife. Then, one day, the poor guy just had a mental breakdown, took a ride on a crazy train, and never got off.
Man, I've got a story that still gives me chills whenever I think about it. When I was about 15, living in Kenya, I had this crazy encounter. Our house was on a farm, so it was pitch black at night, no lights anywhere. So this one night, around 3 or 4 a.m., I hear what sounds like someone stomping around on our roof. Curiosity got the better of me, and I went outside to check it out, but I didn't bother turning on any lights. What I saw up there freaked me out. A dude in a long coat and work boots just walking around on the roof. I started yelling at him to get off, but since it was dark, I couldn't really see him clearly, just the outline of a man. After I finished my rant, this guy just jumps off the roof, landing a solid 40 feet away from me. I had grabbed a machete before stepping outside, and when this person landed, I noticed his knees didn't bend like a normal person's would. They bent in the opposite direction, backwards. Then he turns and face me. Have you ever been in a fight before? Then you know you shift your body weight and get ready for a fight. Stepping back and holding my machete up. I remember thinking, I don't know what manner of man you are, but I will take off your head if you came near me. However, he just took off. I told myself he was either drunk or high, so I let it go and went back to bed. However, that did not explain the way his knees went backwards. But here's why I'm telling you this story. I want to warn anyone who might experience something similar, especially if it involves someone heavy running on your roof in the middle of the night. Don't just rush out there without thinking. A year after my first encounter, it happened again. This time though, I turned on the porch lights before heading out. My porch had these 8 100-watt bulbs that lit up everything. With the lights on, I could see this wasn't a man. It had clothes on, sure, but it wasn't human. I grabbed my machete ready to defend myself, and this thing jumped off the roof just like the first time. We faced off for a moment, about 20 feet apart. I didn't show any fear, and I think it knew I was ready to fight. It just stared for a bit, then ran off into the night. This time I got a close look at it. I looked like something from the old world. The times before God flooded the world. It had a face that was a combination of a man and a vulture. Long nose, jet black eyes like it was a birdman. I'm not trying to scare anyone, just want to make sure you're cautious. Over the years, I found out this creature has been seen by others too, especially by those who've gone out to investigate noises unarmed. I've kept this story to myself mostly, but now that I'm older, I worry about others encountering the same thing. Believe it or not, I ran into it again in Canada on my daughter's roof in the dead of winter. Just goes to show, you never know what's out there. If you ever hear something strange at night, especially on your roof, be smart about how you check it out. And maybe, just maybe, keep a machete handy.
I've got to tell you about something that happened to me, something that still sends shivers down my spine when I think about it. It was right after I had my baby boy. You know how life gets. You're juggling work, the baby, and everything else. It's just non-stop. So this all went down while I was staying over at my mum's place in Texas, trying to get some help with the new baby and all. They say when you've just had a baby, you're kind of vulnerable, not just physically, but also in a way that you might attract negative vibes or energies or whatever. Honestly, I never paid much mind to that stuff until that night. My baby wouldn't settle, just fussy and crying, which wasn't like him. My mum was trying to rock him to sleep and I was lying there next to her, just talking softly, trying not to wake him up more. Then out of nowhere it was like I hit a wall. I couldn't move. I could hear my mum next to me, but it was like I was stuck in my own body, unable to speak or do anything. And then I felt it, this deep, dark feeling like something was there in the room with us, wanting to take my baby. Panic isn't even the word. It was pure terror, the kind that grips you so hard you can't even scream. My mum was still talking, oblivious, asking if I could lay him down now that he'd finally fallen asleep. But I couldn't answer. I couldn't do anything. In that moment of absolute despair, I did the only thing that felt like it could make any difference. I prayed. I called out to Jesus in my head, begging him to make it stop, to protect my baby. And then, as if someone hit the play button again, I could move. I practically shouted, "Jesus, help us!" My mum looked at me like I'd lost my mind, asking why I was suddenly shouting and why I hadn't been answering her. I tried to explain, but how do you explain that kind of fear, that kind of encounter? I didn't sleep a wink for the rest of that night, just watching over my baby, making sure he was still there, still breathing, still safe. Since then, every night, without fail, I pray over my baby. I pray for protection, for safety, for peace. That night changed something in me, made me believe in things I can't see, and showed me the power of calling on Jesus. I can't forget it, and I can't ignore it. It was real, it was terrifying, and it made me a believer in more ways than one.
Let me give you the straight up version of something wild that happened to me a couple of weeks back. I'm in college studying engineering, which basically means my life is a never-ending cycle of all-nighters. Because of that, I end up wandering around outside a lot at unholy hours, just trying to shake off the stress. So this one night, around 2 a.m., I'm out walking with my buddy. I had this massive assignment due the next day, and I was nearly done. My friend, on the other hand, had been glued to his video games until I managed to drag him out for a smoke break. We were just shooting the breeze, walking through this quiet, suburban area when we stumbled upon something gruesome. A bloody, furry mess on the sidewalk. Looked like roadkill, probably fresh since there weren't any flies yet. We gave it a wide bath and kept moving. It was late autumn. The air was crisp. And honestly, it was a nice break from my cramped apartment. We'd walked about 3 kilometers out when we decided to head back. That's when things got weird. Turning around, I suddenly felt dizzy, like a massive gust of wind hit me. But there was nothing there. My friend joked that I was finally cracking from lack of sleep. But as we walked back, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, like there were shadows moving around us. I started freaking out a bit, and my body, noticing I was a mess, suggested we pick up the pace. When we got back to where we'd seen the roadkill, it was gone. All that was left was a blood trail leading off the road into the bushes. I was practically hyperventilating by then. My friend, trying to be the brave one, whipped out his phone flashlight and went to check out where the trail led. I couldn't see what he saw. It was blocking my view. But then he suddenly snapped the light off, grabbed me, and we bolted. We couldn't keep running the whole way back, so it turned into this frantic power walk all the way home. I kept asking him what he saw, and all he'd say was that something was eating the dog. After that, he clammed up, saying he didn't want to talk about it anymore, afraid it might draw whatever it was right to us. And yeah, because of all that, I couldn't even finish my assignment. Just handed it in as it was.
I've always been into all that spooky supernatural stuff, watching shows about ghost encounters and whatnot. But personally, never had anything happen that made me go, yep, that's it. Ghosts are real. That is, until this one night that pretty much flipped everything I believed upside down. So I was driving to my night shift job listening to this radio talk show. They were going on about these apps you can download to track ghosts. Kinda like those EVP things you see on ghost hunting shows. For kicks, I thought. Why not? And downloaded a couple to see how cheesy they were, expecting some lame jump scares or whatever. I messed with them a bit at work, but once it got late and I was by myself, I chickened out and dropped it. Nothing happened, no creepy voices or whatever, just me in an empty office freaking myself out over nothing. Got home, did my usual wind-down routine and crashed. But then, man, I thought I was having this nightmare. I woke up to this dark figure straddling me, choking me, and whispering some really chilling stuff like, "Fight all you want. You can't stop me. I'm too powerful now." I was panicking, trying to figure out how to get my roommate's attention. I'm there, trying to scream, grab anything to make noise, but I just couldn't. It felt like this thing had me locked down tight. Then, I hear my roommate moving around outside my room. And just for a second, this thing turns and its grip loosens. That's my chance. I scream as loud as I can. The figure vanishes and my roommate's bursting through the door, finding me a total mess, shaking, crying, the whole 9 yards. I've tried to make sense of it digging around the internet. Most places chalk it up to sleep paralysis, but I swear, it was something else. I can't help wondering if messing with those apps stirred up something. Ever since then, there's this unease that just hangs over me, like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. So yeah, thanks for letting me spill all this. It feels good to get it off my chest without someone looking at me like I've lost it.
Around 2 a.m. this morning, I was woken up by my little dog barking in the other room. I called out from my bedroom for him to stop barking and come back to bed. He usually snuggles up next to me while sleeping. He came back, jumped onto the bed, and sat staring towards the bedroom door, clearly agitated and seeming to be in guardian mode. Suddenly, he sprang from the bed as if he heard something only he could and ran back into the other room, continuing to bark. What I found odd was that I have a doggy door installed, and he never went outside. If there were a cat or someone prowling about, he surely would have given chase. Many of the older homes in the French Quarter of New Orleans, Louisiana, have courtyards or small backyards, often with wrought iron fences rather than alleyways. This, however, still didn't explain why my dog was remaining inside and not rushing into the yard. After listening to his barking a bit longer, I decided to investigate without turning on any lights to remain inconspicuous. I made my way down to the other end of the house where my dog was barking at the French doors that lead to the courtyard. I began to scan the courtyard from left to right. Initially, I saw nothing but the shadows of the crepe myrtles and the flickering of gas lamps against the brick walls. Then I saw it. Standing off to the right side of my courtyard, near where my bedroom is, was a tall, dark silhouette of a man wearing what appeared to be a fedora-type hat. My heart started to race, and my dog was barking furiously. It stood completely still, seemingly looking in my direction. Suddenly, it vanished. It didn't fade away. It was just gone from one moment to the next. I thought, what the hell did I just see? I got a foreboding feeling from whatever it was. Somehow, I managed to get back to my room, crawl under the covers, and after some time, fell back to sleep. My dog followed me and was silent for the rest of the night. In the morning, I looked outside through the French doors again, wondering if, in my half-asleep state, I could have mistaken something in the courtyard for that shadow. I hadn't. But why was my dog going ballistic? Today, I pondered if this could be connected to recent tragedies. Over the Memorial Day weekend at the end of May, I lost the love of my life to an accidental shooting. My dad is also terminally ill, and I can't help but wonder if seeing this shadow man might be linked to either event. I'm not seeking sympathy with this story. Yes, it's a terrible situation, but I'm genuinely curious about what this shadow was and why it decided to appear in my courtyard last night. If anyone has any insights, please let me know.
I'm just a teenager, but I've already experienced a lot of weird stuff. This one time, my best friend Diane and I were arguing over our lunches when suddenly our friend started yelling out our names, urging us to follow him to the sports field. We found him digging in the ground, and when we asked him what he was up to, he showed us this tooth. It was a huge fang, I believe. When our teacher noticed us with the tooth, she insisted we dispose of it, suggesting it was some kind of vampire fang. We all laughed it off because I firmly believe there's no such thing. So the friend who found the tooth threw it really high into the air. But then, his hand started bleeding profusely out of nowhere. Despite the amount of blood when he was sent to the nurse's office, there wasn't a single mark on his hand. Weird, right? On another occasion, my school, which is divided into two buildings, one for elementary students and the other for high schoolers, became the backdrop for another strange event. Some of the high school boys started calling me White Lady due to my pale skin. Initially, it didn't bother me much, but it quickly became annoying, so I decided to talk to my teacher about it. During lunch, she summoned the three boys who had been teasing me and gathered us in her classroom. She then shared a story about a similar incident with one of her former students and how after her death she haunted the boys who had teased her. That story genuinely frightened me. After lunch, the boys who had been teasing me went to the restroom. About 10 minutes later, they came back screaming and running towards me, frantically apologizing. When I asked them what was wrong, they claimed they saw a white lady appear in the mirror of the bathroom. At first, I didn't believe them, thinking they were just trying to scare me as payback for telling on them, and because of the scary story our teacher had told. But they seemed genuinely terrified.
This creepy story happened to my younger cousin when he was about to leave our province in Sta Monica Laguna to study in Manila. The day before he left, his two playmates, Cat and Carlin, asked him if he could still play with them for the last time. My cousin agreed to them and told them to come back at 4 p.m. since he still had errands to do. At exactly 4 p.m., he heard Cat calling his name from the outside of their house, so he immediately went out. But, to his confusion, Cat was not around, and there were no other kids around the area. My cousin just decided to go to Cat's house to ask if she was calling him, but Cat said she didn't go to his house yet and she was just about to leave and call him. After confirming with Cat, he just thought it was just his mind playing tricks on him, so they just fetched Carlin and started playing beside the narrow road. They decided that my cousin would be the it, since he was the oldest. After he counted up to 10, he immediately left the spot and started looking for the two girls. A few minutes of checking every corner and possible hiding place near the spot area, he first found Carlin hiding behind the tricycle parked beside the road. He just peeped underneath the tricycle and saw Carlin's feet on the other side of the tricycle. He was sure it was Carlin since he saw the same slippers and pajamas. He shouted, "Boom, Carlin," and ran as fast as he could. But after he reached the spot, there was no Carlin running behind him. He just decided to keep looking again for more minutes until Carlin approached him and told him it was getting dark. They should just find Cat and go home. He asked Carlin if she was hiding behind the tricycle, but she said no, since she was hiding in one of the nearest alleys. He told Carlin that there seems someone's copying Cat's voice and Carlin's appearance. Both of them got an eerie feeling, so they hurriedly looked for Cat. When they both reached the short alley, they saw Cat's shadow from the other edge. They were both sure it was Cat since the shadow had the same body build and hair length. They started shouting, "Boom, Cat!" But when they were very near to Cat's shadow, they got terrified and ran so fast back to the road, since they both noticed that the shadow, whom they thought belongs to Cat, was on the opposite direction of their shadows. They were both sure it was not normal since the sun was setting behind them, and there was no other light near the area. When they both reached the road, they found Cat waiting for them. While they were telling Cat about the creepy shadow that they both saw, they all heard a giggle near the area, and in split seconds, they all saw a kid running so fast into the alley, and they all freaked out when they realized she just looked like Carlin. They didn't see the face, but the hair and clothes were just the same.
This incident took place in London back in 2016 when I was 16 years old. I was preparing for my GCSEs and used to attend tutoring sessions late into the evening. One night, I found myself leaving the class around 10:30 p.m. There were two routes leading to my home. One was a longer path that took about 45 minutes, and the other was a shortcut that was deserted after dark. Since I was already late and hungry, I decided to take the shortcut. Biggest mistake. On that route, I had to cross a small bridge and then walk about 2 kilometers to reach my home, passing an abandoned hospital along the way. The weather was pleasant that day and I was in a good mood as I plugged in my earphones and started walking. Everything was normal until I neared that hospital. Suddenly the wind turned cold, giving me goosebumps. This was strange because London is usually quite humid. Nevertheless, I kept walking when I felt as though someone was following me. I turned around, but no one was there. I continued to walk when, in the distance, I saw a woman wearing what looked like my neighbor's coat. Relieved, I thought I wouldn't have to walk alone on this eerie road. I shouted, calling her name, but there was no response. So I started walking faster towards her. However, I couldn't get any closer to her. So I began to run, still calling her name. Despite our walking at a normal pace, the distance between us remained unchanged. Confused, I stopped to figure out what was really happening. I kept my eyes on her, and in a fraction of seconds, she vanished into thin air. Keep in mind, this road was straight for at least 1 kilometer with nowhere to hide. There was no way she could have run off or hidden somewhere. That was enough for me. I lost control and started running like never before, only stopping once I reached my home. I was so scared that I came down with a fever that lasted for a week. The next day, I told everything to my family, but they didn't believe me and shrugged it off, saying I should take a break from studying and that I was imagining things. But weird things started happening. I would feel someone caressing my hair as I slept. I was afraid to be in the dark, and I remember seeing silhouettes in my room whenever I was alone. However, I didn't tell these things to my family. But one day, my cousin, with whom I shared my room, came running out of the room screaming. We were all in the living room watching TV. When she was asked what happened, she said that after taking a shower, she entered the room and saw me sitting near the window looking outside. I usually sat there after finishing my studies. She opened the cupboard and was searching for something. When she tried to ask me whether I had seen what she was looking for, getting no reply from me, she looked towards the window and found no one there. I was still in the living room with everyone watching television. After hearing her, I shared what I had been experiencing for a week. Now my family believed something was indeed wrong and took me to a holy place. There we met with a person who dealt with these kinds of cases. He recited some verses from the Bible over me and instructed my elders to never let me be alone in that house and strictly told me never to take that road again. He didn't tell me the reason as he felt I was too young to know. However, things didn't happen like that again, and we even moved out of that home after 3-4 months. So that's it.
For much of my childhood days in Edinburgh, Scotland, my parents often worried about me as they felt I was sensitive to spirits and prone to seeing things others couldn't see. My mother thinks this may stem from the fact that Dad's grandmother was a well-regarded healer in the old days back in Ireland. I don't know much about my Irish relations though, as I have not kept in touch with that side of the family after my father died over a decade ago. Mom only mentioned this incident during a visit back to Edinburgh some years ago, a few decades after we were all grown up and left home. It must have been during the late 1960s, and I was about 4 years old at the time. I'm sure I hadn't even started kindergarten yet. My parents, older sister, who was about 7, and I were walking along Royal Mile, near where the Edinburgh Castle now stands, after a weekly dinner at Grandma's house. Edinburgh was a lot quieter in those days. Cars were an expense most families couldn't afford, so there was not much traffic on the road. It was already dark, about 8 or 9 p.m. We had walked halfway to the bus stop when Dad asked why I kept looking back. I told him there was a tall man in black following us. It was so long ago, I honestly can't remember too many details about what I thought I saw. Only that it was something darker than the shadows under the few streetlights. I do remember this growing feeling of unease that made my chest feel too tight. My family couldn't see anyone or anything, and I burst into tears because no one believed me. Even at that young age, I wasn't in the habit of making up tales to my parents. They were very strict with us and frowned on any fanciful nonsense. Children should be seen and not heard, and all that. When in public, we were not allowed to create a scene that might embarrass them. My behavior seemed so odd to Dad that he hailed a passing taxi, a luxury for us at the time, to get us out of there. As we piled into the taxi, my sister looked back from the back seat, but said she still couldn't see anything out there. When the taxi driver heard what had upset me, he nodded sagely at Dad and said that the Royal Mile was particularly unclean. He advised Dad in Gaelic against having the family out on that stretch of road after dark in the future. He reminded him that during the numerous battles and dark periods in Scottish history, including the Jacobite Risings, many terrible cruelties were inflicted on the locals. As a consequence, restless spirits were thought to linger in areas where great violence had occurred. We visited Grandma's house many times after that, but I don't remember any other incident. I have to ask Mom if Dad took precautions after that is, leaving earlier or only staying for lunch. Coincidentally, or not, Grandma's house on the Royal Mile was said to have been a significant site during historical events, but that's another story.
Okay, so it's hard for me to kind of figure out where to start telling you my story. So let me just say this. My family's from Punta del Agua, Argentina. And for as long as I can remember, my family has been in the business of harvesting sunflowers. I remember being a kid playing out in the fields full of sunflowers, being chased by bees and stung left and right. And it was in these very same fields where my brother and I had our Dogman encounter. But however, before I get to that, let me just explain to you a little bit about the process of growing sunflowers. It's important that I share this with you so you'll understand some of the things that were going on. Now, the beginning of the process is that the sunflower seeds are planted shallow in the earth. And then months later, they blossom and grow. And you have fields. I'm talking about, and our family had thousands of hectares of sunflower fields. During that time period when the flowers are blossoming is the time when the bees come out. Now pause and let me say this. If you're allergic to bees, do not under any circumstances go to a sunflower field because you will get stung. Nonetheless, the flowers grow and then they get to the point to where they start to die and dry out. And then each sunflower seed, sometimes hundreds per plant, is ready to be harvested. And those seeds are harvested and turned into sunflower oil. Now, if you don't know, sunflower oil is the second most used cooking oil in the world. Now, the majority of sunflower oil comes from Russia and the Ukraine. However, down here in Argentina, we do quite a bit of production ourselves. Now, let's hit rewind and go back and I'll share some things with you. The very first time my brother and I had any clue that these creatures that you call Dogman existed was during the planting season. The two of us were out there working the seeding machine. If you don't know what a seeding machine is, imagine a giant tractor. On the front, you feed the seed into these grates, and then you drive along and it plows the soil and seeds the soil all at one time. My brother is up front loading the seeds. I'm behind the wheel when I see something about 150 yards away running full speed across the field. Now, to me, it looked like a giant black dog. And when I say giant, I mean the size of a bull running across the field. But understand, this is flat land, very few trees anywhere. So we're able to stand there and watch this gigantic dog run across open fields all the way out into the distance. The two of us look at each other, shake our heads, and get back to work. That was the very first time. Now, that was the very first time we saw one of these creatures. The second time we had an encounter with this thing, we were both in a truck with my father. God rest his soul, he's passed on now. It's nighttime. We're traveling home from my uncle's house who lived about 20 miles away. We're driving up the road and you see a giant black wolf standing on the side of the roadway. This time we got a clear glimpse at it. 9 feet tall, black, muscular wolf standing on 2 legs. Now, the weirdest thing about this encounter was I think the headlights startled it because it just stood there and stared at us as we rode by. Imagine the scene. It's on the passenger side of the road. My brother's in the front seat. I'm in the back seat. Both of us are on the passenger side. The two of us are freaking out as we see this thing. And my dad is just driving along like he doesn't see anything. Once we pass it up, we're a couple of miles away from home. I'm asking my dad, I'm saying, listen, did you not see this thing? His only reply is, yes, son, I saw it, but there's nothing I can do about it. Those things have been around here for a very long time. Don't bother it, and it won't bother you. We go home, go inside, didn't have a problem with it at all. Fast forward, my brother gets his girlfriend pregnant. They decide they're going to get married. Now it's me, my mother, my father, my brother, and his pregnant wife all living in a house together. It's 3:30 a.m. when I hear his wife screaming at the top of her lungs. I come down the steps into the living room, looking around. The front door is open, and I hear her outside screaming. When I go outside, she's down on the ground with her back against the front side of the house, holding her belly. Understand, it's pitch black out there. The only light is the light from the front porch. And she is in tears. My brother and father come outside, and we're trying to figure out what's going on with her because she's absolutely hysterical. We get her up on her feet, get her back into the house, sit her on the sofa. She starts to explain to us that she was feeling nauseous. So she went outside for some fresh air, sat down in a rocking chair on the porch and was rocking back and forth, singing to the baby, when she heard something rustling to her left on the side of the house. At first, she ignores the sound, but then she hears it again and turns and looks in that direction and sees these giant yellow eyes staring at her. Now, the way she described the size of these eyes, she took her fist and she balled them up and she held both of her fists up into the air and said, "This is what the size of these eyeballs were like." So now my brother is spazzing out, losing his mind. He grabs a shotgun, goes outside into the darkness, looking for whatever it was. We spend hours that night circling the house and circling the property, looking for something. Didn't find anything. The next morning we come back and the only thing we find are these two gigantic canine footprints. So now the entire family is up in arms. My mother's afraid. My brother's wife is afraid. My dad is on edge. My brother has lost his damn mind. And to make the situation worse, it's harvesting time. We spent hours, I'm talking about 12 hours a day, working out in the fields, which would mean that we would leave my mother and his wife at home alone. Now, for the first 3 days of harvesting, everything went smooth. Didn't have a problem whatsoever. But it was on the 4th day of harvesting that all hell broke loose. Understand, we're up at 4 a.m. having breakfast. Work started as soon as the sun came up. Well, the sun comes up and we start to head towards one of our back fields. We're riding along the roadway, and this thing waits till we get all the way to the back field. That's when my father spots this thing rise up and make a beeline straight for the house. Pause right here and let me say this to you. Naturally, maybe saying to yourself, how do you know that this was Dogman that was running towards the house? In your mind, you may be saying it's daybreak. There's not a whole bunch of light. And you're right. But when you're used to working, as soon as the sun comes up, your eyes become adjusted to seeing everything. So we knew, combine the fact that this thing was standing up, running on 2 legs, and it was sprinting towards the house like an Olympic track runner. Trust and believe, we knew what we were seeing. So now we're all in a panic, hop in the pickup truck, and instead of taking a road back out, we cut straight across the fields, making a beeline for the house. Now, I'm not sure if you've ever been on farmland, but there's a reason why you cut roads through farmland. Because when you ride across that soil, it's a bumpy ride. We're flying 85 miles an hour across those fields, trying to intersect this thing as it's headed towards the house, and it is outrunning us. In this right here, in this moment, that things really became terrifying. Because as we're coming on an angle to the house, it's going around the side of the house to the front. When I tell you, we damn near ran into the side of our house, trying to come to a stop, jump out. My brother and my father circle around the front side of the house, headed towards the front door. I go around the back side of the house, going into the back door. And we all meet. Now listen to me, this is when it gets crazy. We all meet in the living room and there's no sign of this thing whatsoever. So now we're standing there. My mother's freaking out. My sister-in-law is hyperventilating. And that's when we hear movement on top of our roof. Heavy movement. The wood was creaking and cracking. And again, understand, this is daybreak. The sun is coming up. So now the 3 of us go out of the front door armed, looking at the roof. And this thing is squatted down on our roof. The wood on the roof is warping and bending, and it's just staring at us. Listen, I'm going to stop right here and let me explain this to you. To this day, I have no clue what it wanted or why it came there. But when I tell you we lit that thing up, we shot it multiple times. Now, the first 2 bullets that hit it, it didn't even bother to react to him. It was my brother shot at his head and hit its ear, blowing a portion of its ear off, that it turned, ran up our roof, jumped up into the air. It looked like something from a freaking horror movie. And so now we're scrambling around the back side of the house to get more shots in on it. And by the time we get to the side of the house, this thing is 80 yards away. And my brother and my father were not letting this go. So now we're back in our pickup truck trying to chase this thing down. And when I tell you they are fast, they are fast. And it is cutting across field after field after field after field. And we are driving across people's fields, chasing this thing down. And we finally catch up with this thing at the Rio del Gato River. Now, I don't know if it had reached the maximum distance that it could run. I don't know if it had overheated. I can't explain to you why this thing stopped. But as we got closer to that spot on the river, it was laying down on the ground panting, and my father rammed into it with the truck. My father ran into it with the truck going about 60 miles an hour. I'm not sure if you've ever been driving down the road and ran into a deer, or maybe hit a bear or hit an elk. But when you slam into something that big, going that fast, it truly is an accident. Completely tore the front of that truck up. We hop out and start shooting. It gets up and starts to move towards the river as we shoot and hit it. The next thing I know, it's jumping into the river. It goes underwater and it never comes up. We stayed there for 2 hours, working our way up and down that river, looking for this thing, and not a sign of it. And let me say this to you. I've had the pleasure of listening to a lot of Dogman encounters, and I've heard people say that these things are invincible. And maybe there is a version of them that's invincible, but this one wasn't invincible. It wasn't invincible at all. In fact, I think we killed it. I don't have the body, but I can tell you one thing. It ain't never been back to our property again.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? The one and only James Williams, Dog Waters, and I'm back. And I'm going to give you a little bit inside baseball on this story before, and I'll tell you why I want to give you inside baseball. This is an outlier story for me, and I vetted it. It's true. I've talked to this gentleman's wife. I talked to the two brothers. And the reason why this is an outlier story for me is because it doesn't truly fit each and every characteristic of where these encounters happen. So this area in Argentina is primarily farmland, but it's not corn that's grown there. And I think it may be interesting. I'm looking for more encounters in that area to add to the data set, because in my mind, it may not just be that it needs to be cornfields. It may just need to be any crop being grown. So now there's definitely a waterway, a river within, I want to say, 50 miles of the area. And that's where they ended up confronting it and shooting it, and they believe they killed it because it went under the water and it never resurfaced. However, I'm not so sure about that. But I gotta take them at their word because I wasn't there. Now, what I want to try and figure out is where it could have come from. And please look it up on a map. Is Punta, Punta del Agua, Agua, and Argentina. When you look it up on Google Maps, at first it's going to bring you to a restaurant. It's a certain province in Argentina. Matter of fact, I'm just going to I'll put the coordinates to the area there. I'm not going to put the coordinates to the house. But they're not hard to find because there's only so many houses. There's a bunch of farmland. But as a researcher, this one intrigues me because it's outside of the data sets of what I've been hearing, seeing, and collecting. The behavior pattern is pretty much normal. They like to intimidate people. I don't know what it was about his wife and being pregnant. I think it was directly correlated to the pregnancy. And I haven't had many encounters where women who've been pregnant had Dogman encounters. So this is another outlier for this story. And it's one of those things that I find to be kind of confusing to me. And I would like to get you guys' opinion on it. Why do you think that it would be attracted to a pregnant woman? I don't know. I mean, I know there's reasons why they're attracted to a woman who's menstruating. That's a common occurrence with Dogman and Bigfoot. But with her being pregnant, I just don't have enough data and enough information on it. And so, also, if any of you had an encounter with any kind of cryptid while you were pregnant, I would love to hear the story so I can collect more data on those type of encounters. If any of you women had encounters with dogmen while you were pregnant, I think you got to be a little specific nowadays. Nonetheless, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it was entertaining, but it's a point of confusion for me, and I'm at the point now where these type of things are a little bit more interesting to me than your typical sighting, because it's more of a puzzle for me to try and figure out what's going on. You know, why is this happening in this location to this family? So the two things I want to know is, what do you think? Look at the area. And the second thing is, you know, have any of you ladies out there had encounters with cryptids while you were pregnant? For me to have a valid data set, I feel like I need 10 to 15 encounters on it. And I don't have to make 10 to 15 public, but I need at least 10 to 15. So if you had an encounter with something like this while you were pregnant, please reach out to me. And hopefully everything worked out for you. It didn't go crazy or wasn't nothing insane or absolutely terrifying. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, it's the one and only James Williams Dark Waters, and I'm out. Peace. Driving for Amazon in the country of Alabama is so much more different than when I worked in Montgomery. In Montgomery, the routes are shorter with stops all over the place inside of the city. But man, when I decided to take a job working for this new warehouse that delivered out in the country, talk about wild. See, it was the greed that got the best of me. They were paying $9 more per hour, and I'm like, oh hell yeah, I will take that job any day of the week. But nobody bothered to explain to me that the stops were 10 to 15 miles apart and that I would be traveling damn near 100 miles in a freaking day, sometimes only to deliver boxes the size of my hand. Anyway, it's my last run of the day, and I'm way up north in Allison, Alabama. The sun is down and riding down Highway 53. This place is so far out in the country, honestly, if my freaking GPS would talk, it would be like, dude, you are out in the sticks, turn around, danger, turn around, danger. Nonetheless, it tells me to turn right down this road and says my destination will be up ahead on the left. Okay, so I turn down this dark road. It's got trees overhanging the road like a freaking horror movie, but I don't see no house and I don't see no mailbox. Then the road comes to a dead end. So I turn the van around, riding slowly, looking for at least a mailbox. I'm riding along and this man jumps out into the road with his hands up in the air, waving, screaming, saying, hey, are you Amazon? I drive a van with Amazon on the front, the side, and the back, and I'm thinking to myself, shit, this man looks crazy. He cannot read. What the fuck is about to go down? He tells me that he's been waiting for his generator for over a week. And I'm like, okay, so you don't want me to leave it right here in the road. Where's your house? That's when he walks over to the side of the road and opens up what looks like trees and brush, but it's an entire fence decorated to look like trees and brush. Now I'm saying to myself, oh hell no, this some Texas Chainsaw Massacre type bullshit. Who in the fuck lives like this? He tells me to drive up the driveway, so I turn in, drive up this driveway. There's trees on both sides of the road. Then it opens up, and I see some of the weirdest shit I've ever seen. This man's house is nice. In fact, it's absolutely beautiful. Well manicured lawn, wraparound porch with a swing, painted white. I mean, absolutely gorgeous. Beautiful. Gas lamps outside. The only problem is, this dude has crucifixes all over the place. I mean, big old crucifixes on the side of the house, little white crucifixes in the front yard. And I'm saying to myself, holy crap, I done rolled up on the end of the world cult. Let me give this man his generator and get the hell out of here. But so I pull up, open up the back of the van. Understand, this generator is heavy as hell. And he says, so you're the new Amazon guy. I'm like, yes. And he says, have you heard what happened to the old guy? I'm like, no. Now, I have this heavy generator on the dolly. I'm rolling it up to his front steps, and he says, listen, I know this may be an inconvenience to you, but I tend to order a lot of stuff from Amazon. But if you deliver to my house first, you should be fine. Do not wait until after dark to deliver to my house. It's not safe. I look around, see all of these crucifixes, and honestly, I'm not trying to be a smart ass when I say this to this man, but I said, listen, based on all these damn crucifixes you got out here, this looks like the safest place in the United States. But he just smiles at me and says it keeps the evil away. Then he grabs that generator, drags it into the house, and before he closes his front door, he says, will you close the gate behind you when you leave? All you have to do is grab the 2 ropes and pull them, and it will latch automatically. So I hop in my van, drive back down that roadway, park along the road, get out, walk around. So I'm standing there for a split second, marveling at how this man has decorated his front gate. Sure enough, there are 2 ropes there. When you pull them, the gate closes, and he even has this fake foliage that protrudes all the way out and disguises the dirt road underneath it. Imagine the scene. I have to circle around the front of my van to get in and drive off. So I'm in the process of circling around when I hear this yelling, screaming, roaring growl. Scares the bejesus out of me. Hopping in the van, cranking it up, flooring it, pulling away, and when I look through that side view mirror, I swear to you, if I'm lying, I'm flying. There is a giant black wolf standing on 2 legs that walks out into the road, and it's looking at my van. I see the red reflected in its eyes. It's from my tail lights. Listen, this was the first time I delivered to the Mosley's property. The second time, I damn near had a fucking heart attack.
Gonna get a lot of dough. Anything is possible. Turn me up in the headphone. Yeah. Trying to get a lot of dough and dirt through all the obstacles, cause anything is possible. Yeah. Oh man, I got a lot of gold. Stack that bread and by my nose. Anything is possible. Yeah. Trying to get a lot of dough and dirt through all the obstacles, cause anything is possible.
Alright, fast forward. The next day, I'm off work, and the following day I go in. When I get to the warehouse, I ask my supervisor what happened to the last dude that worked my route. He answers me with this aggravated tone, asking me why, and I tell him, listen, one of the homeowners on my route alluded to something bad happening. I just want to know what's going on. The problem was my supervisor is not the straightest fork in the drawer. Dude is dumb. So he starts to ask me, what do I mean by elude? And I got to go through the process of explaining to him what the word eludes means. And once he has the understanding of exactly what I'm saying, his reply is, oh, nothing happened. But he can't look me in my eyes. So now I'm shifting my head, bending my neck, trying to look him in his eyes. And I'm like, dude, why are you lying? Even with me calling him out, he still can't look me in my eyes. And he says, look, don't worry about it. It's nothing. So a few days pass and there's no deliveries for Mr. Mosley. Then Friday comes around and he's got 2 packages. So I listen, take that shit over to his house first thing in the morning. Understand, this is way out at the end of my route. So I start there and begin working my way backwards. I get to his house, open the gate, and all those crosses in the yard, over 50 of them, are broken, thrown all over the place. Looks like no one's home. So I deliver the packages and leave. Next time I come to the house, the crosses are back in place and Mr. Mosley is sitting on the porch. I ask him how he's doing. He tells me he had a long, long night. Then he goes on and continues with this coded secret language talk that he had been doing the whole time, saying, you know what? You're smarter than the other gentlemen who work this route. You make adjustments. Life is all about adapting to change. Understand, he's sitting there in a chair swinging back and forth, and he's got that middle stare looking off into the distance like this man has so much crap on his mind that it's weighing him down. Get this, as I'm leaving his front porch, headed down the driveway to go back to my truck, I notice spent shotgun shells all over the front yard. Stopping, picking one of them up, I say, hey, what you been shooting at like this? That's when he replies, werewolves. But he says it so casually and calm, like nothing was wrong with the words that came out of his mouth. Now, based on what I had saw that, I figured it was the perfect time to ask him what happened to the last guy who worked this route. And he says, oh, you talking about Chris. Man, he was such a good kid, but he couldn't take it anymore. You see, Chris was hard-headed, thought he could do things his way, real stubborn. But he found out things around here don't go the way you want them to just because you think they should go that way. Now I'm poking and prodding him, trying to figure out what happens, and that's when he tells me that Chris, the last driver who had this route, had his van ran off the road by a werewolf, slammed into a tree. Now pause right here in the story for a moment because I know it sounds like a stretch. But remember, I saw this thing with my own two eyes. I did not want to believe that what this man was saying to me was the truth, but I had absolutely no other options based on everything that I saw. And when I say I didn't want to believe, I'm telling you, I didn't want to believe that I was driving into an area every day that when the sun went down, monsters were running around. So I decided right then and there to prove to myself that what Mr. Mosley was saying was pure and utter bullshit. I asked him, hey, do you have a way to get in contact with Chris? And he goes inside, comes back out with Chris's cell phone number written on a piece of paper. I leave, drive my route towards the end of the day. When I deliver my last package, I call Chris on the phone, but there's no answer, and his voicemail is full. Next time I'm at the warehouse, I ask my supervisor about him again, and he gets angry, tells me to stop asking him questions about Chris. Listen, over the next few days, Mr. Mosley has no packages, so I'm just moving back and forth, going on about my business, and I'm kind of trying to put the whole situation out of my head when I get a call from an unknown number. When I answer, it's Chris, and I may have jumped down his throat too fast. And I tell him, listen, bro, I work your old route. Mr. Mosley gave me your number, told me something bad went down, and I just need to know what happened because I'm on this route. Look, Chris's response completely and totally fucked me up because the first thing he says is, have you seen the men with the military backpacks yet? And I'm like, no, I haven't seen anybody with any backpacks. And he says, good, because they are the handlers. He says, if you don't see them, then you are fine. But the moment you come in contact with them, understand, be careful what you say, because they are the ones that control the werewolves. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm just telling you my story. Chris goes on to explain to me that the thing that ran his truck off the road was actually sent after him. And I'm like, by who and why? Right then and there, in the middle of me asking him that question, not only does my cell phone hang up, but the damn cell phone restarts itself and goes into safe mode. Almost as if someone was telling me that I needed to get my ass off the phone with Chris. It wasn't safe. Imagine a scene. I'm there driving along in my truck thinking to myself, yo, this is some straight up cloak and dagger bullshit. I have absolutely no interest in this whatsoever. All I'm trying to do is make my deliveries and make my money. This is some bullshit. Now, when I'm done for the day, I pull back up to the warehouse, get out, head inside, and I'm debating in my mind if I should talk to my boss about this at all. But I'm kind of pissed off because I'm feeling like, listen, bro, you got me out here hanging. Like, you could have told me there was some weird, crazy shit going on. So I confront him and I say, hey, boss, listen, I talked to Chris, who used to work here, and I'm confused because I'm trying to figure out why you didn't take some time to explain to me that there's some X-Files conspiracy going on with this route. That's when he finally pulls me into his office, closes the door, and says, look, drive your fucking route and shut up. I don't need them people coming back in here messing with us, bro. All you need to do is drive your route. If there's a problem at the Mosley house, go in the daytime and you will be fine. Don't go over to that house at night and you shouldn't have any issues. But hold on, for you listening to the story, I need you to understand something. You see, I'm standing there feeling played because he knew this shit from the time I was hired. He knew all this shit from the time he gave me Chris's route. So that wasn't going to work for me, man. Dude, you sent me into harm's way. Those were the exact words that came out of my mouth. Bro, I don't know what the fuck is wrong with you, but you sent me into harm's way with no warning. I don't even feel like I can trust you. I don't know if I even want to keep this job at this point in time. Understand, the words that came out of my mouth wasn't so much about expressing myself or just getting it off my chest. I was dead serious. And he could tell, like I was angry, wanted to do something to him. That's when he looks at me and he says, you know what? So you talked to Chris, right? And I'm like, yeah, I talked to Chris. And he says, next time you talk to Chris, ask him why he didn't do what he was told to do. He says, no, you see, Chris watched too many sci-fi movies. He wanted to be a fucking hero, and he caused us all kind of problems at this warehouse. My boss puts it all in perspective for me. He says, you and I are a hell of a lot alike, and you need to listen to me. You see, I want to pay my bills, and you want to pay your bills. You took this job because of the raise, and that's the only reason why you took it. Be honest with yourself. Same reason why I took the managerial job was because of the raise. And what happened to Chris? Chris brought it upon himself. As long as you understand that, you will be fine. Listen, now that I understood exactly what the hell was going down, I wasn't trying to be in the middle of none of that crap. So I continued working my route, making Mr. Mosley's house my first stop, and then working my way back all the way to the warehouse. A month passes with absolutely no issues whatsoever. Then I'm driving up the road, headed to Mr. Mosley's house, and I notice these two unmarked vans down at the very end of the road where you got to turn around and makes a dead end. I get out, open the gate, drive up in the driveway, and Mr. Mosley is outside boarding up broken windows. And I'm like, Mr. M, what the hell is going on? But he quickly turns his head in my direction and begins waving, telling me, hey, everything's okay. Just leave fast. I'm walking up to his porch with his package, trying to talk to him, and this guy comes walking around the side of the house. 6'7", slender, bald-headed, cargo pants on, black t-shirt, sidearm on his right leg. This guy not only looks like he's the part of some type of military organization, but he looks like a badass motherfucker who's a part of some type of military organization. I'm telling you, it was the way that this man walked that let you know immediately, nope, I'm not fucking with him. Because he walks around that corner, comes all the way up to the steps of the porch where I'm at, and he says, have you made your delivery yet? Not only was it the way he walked, but it was his tone of voice. Everything about this dude just oozed. I will fuck you up in a heartbeat. I don't know why I did this, but you know how it is when you know somebody's trying to punk you and you can't really do anything about it, but you want them to know that you kind of not afraid of them. So I'm slowly putting the package on the ground, looking up at him, and he says, drop the package before I fuck you up and leave. Now imagine the scene. I done dropped those two packages right there on the third step. I'm backing away from him, and I'm like, yo, Mr. M, you okay? You need anything? Is everything all right? And he reluctantly looks back and tells me he's fine. So I leave, finish my route. Another month passes, and this man has not had a package ordered whatsoever. And understand, Mr. Moses was the kind of guy who had 3-4 deliveries per week. But all of a sudden, nothing. So much so that I have to shift my route back to being a normal route. And it kind of gets to the point to where I completely forget about Mr. Mosley. Then one day I pull up to the warehouse, I'm checking the logs, and sure enough, I got a delivery from him. I'm actually excited because I kind of want to know what the hell happened when I left. So I head on over to the house, and when I get there, the fence is no longer camouflaged and disguised. There's an actual mailbox right there off the road, and the fence itself is open. Now I'm driving up the driveway. The house is painted blue. The crosses are gone. I park the van, take the package out, and as I'm walking up to the steps, I realize, wait, this is Mr. Moses' address, but this package is not addressed to him. So I decide to knock on the door. Amazon, this lady comes to the door. When I ask her about Mr. Mosley, she says that the previous renter died and that her and her daughter had just moved in and they were excited about renting this house. Listen, I'm standing there looking at this lady saying to myself, what the fuck do you mean Mr. Mosley died? Listen, I asked her how Mr. Mosley died, and she explains to me that she didn't know. She just saw the house for rent and decided to rent it. And when she came and did the walkthrough, the gentleman who showed her the house told her that the previous renter recently died. Now this is where it gets scary for me. Now this right here is where it gets scary for me. I leave. I'm driving up the road, headed back to Highway 53, and two black vans block the road, and the same dude who I saw on the porch gets out, walks up to the driver's side door, and says, Mr. Johnson, you know what happens to curious cats, right? They start to lose their 9 lives. I throw my hands up in the air. I say, listen, bro, I don't know what's going on, but whatever y'all doing, y'all do. I'm just trying to make my money. Understand, this man is staring at me with death in his eyes. And he says, I'm glad you and I have an understanding. Be careful, Mr. Johnson. Then they allow me to leave. Another 2 months pass and I don't have another delivery for that address. Then when one comes and I go to the house, there's another person living there. And I ask about the previous renter and they say that they moved and left all of their furniture in the house. When I get back to the warehouse, there's this fine ass white girl, I mean yoga fine, has access to the entire database. She knows where every package has come from and where every package is going. Now get this, I buy her lunch and ask her for a favor. I wanted to know exactly how many different people ordered packages to that particular address. She agrees to look it up for me while we sit there and have lunch. It turns out that every 3 to 5 months, it looked like someone new moved into that house. Now, straight up, I'm not telling you that I know what the fuck is going on, but I'm just telling you what I saw. I tried to call Chris back and just hold a conversation with him about the whole situation again, but it kept going to voicemail. So here's what I think, and it's only based on what I've seen. Those people are doing some kind of training or experimentation right there on that property. Understand, I still drive that exact same route. I still go to that house. And in the past 9 months, there have been 4 new residents that have lived there. Listen, I don't know what type of training it is or the purpose of it or who's behind it. But all I can tell you is what I saw and what I think is going on. You decide the rest for yourself.
Let me start off my story here. I consider myself to be a wilderness expert. I have such a deep understanding of being outdoors, bushcraft, and survival that there are very few men who can rival the knowledge that I have. And I know that sounds arrogant for me to say something like that, but I'll say this to you. I spent over 100 days in the wilderness during wintertime in a shelter that I built myself. No tent, no nothing. So when I was approached by a TV producer with the idea that he wanted to film a show with me in the woods of Alaska for 40 days, I thought it was the perfect opportunity. In fact, when I discussed it with my wife, she encouraged me to do it. Now, pause right here and let me say this. I'm not sure if you ever met a person and you got a bad vibe from them, but then you decided that you were going to ignore the bad vibe. That's the situation I found myself in when I met Chester. I'm not going to say his last name because I don't want to put this guy all the way out there. He's still in the business. But when I met Chester, I had a bad vibe about him, a bad feeling. Just the look in his eyes. Nonetheless, I wanted to be on television. I wanted to be a star. Since then, that desire to be on TV and to be a star has been completely bled out of me. I could freaking care less at this point. But back then, I really wanted it. And so when he came to me and he pitched his idea, 40 days in the wilderness of Alaska, me and the cameraman all alone, and I start off with just the basics, I was excited. I'm not going to lie to you. I was extremely excited and ready to go. And the first time that Chester was on some BS was after the negotiations. Now, I negotiated that I would get $10,000 for being in the woods for those 40 days. That was all I was going to get compensated, but the rights to the show were completely his. I didn't want anything to do with the show at all. I just figured if I'm going to be out in the woods anyway, I might as well get paid for it. Well, we come to an agreement, sign paperwork, and he mails me a check. And I go to deposit your check, and the check bounces. Now, imagine a scene. My wife and I are sitting there at the kitchen table when we come to the realization that the check has bounced. And I'm not sure about you, but you know, when you get money in, you tend to spend that money. So we thought we had $5,000 come in, so I let my wife go shopping. Well, that $5,000 hits the bank, and then the check bounces, and now we got a major problem. So now I'm calling Chester, telling him, listen, I don't know what kind of shiesty business you're on, but you're going to need to get me my money. He goes on to explain to me that the funds were coming into his account from a larger producer from a TV station, and that the funds came in delayed. I explained to him, well, he should have written the check to me once the money cleared. I told him I needed another check or I wasn't doing anything, and this time I needed a cashier's check. Now, to be clear with you, the man overnighted the money to me the next day. It seemed like it wasn't going to be a problem, but I should have known right then and there that that was an issue. That was immaturity on my part, and more than just immaturity, it was just me being greedy. Me going after that money. Fast forward, we're getting prepared to start the show. And he introduces me to the cameraman, a guy named Benjamin that they call Bud. Bud himself was an outdoorsman. I mean, this guy really understood what it meant to be out in the woods. He had been hunting, fishing, hiking his entire life, and he had worked on a whole bunch of major TV shows. I mean, a whole hell of a lot better about the situation. The two of us, Bud and I, spent a week together in my hometown getting to know each other because we're going to spend a significant amount of time out in the woods. He and I go into the woods together and go on a 3-day camping trip, and I really get to like and understand this man. Now, while we're out there, he starts to talk about Chester. And he says, you know, I did a couple of these with Chester before, and I'm hoping that this one actually works out. And I'm like, well, what do you mean you hope that this one works out? He goes on to explain that Chester has been pitching these shows to TV stations for years. He always pays the money, but when it's time to get it across the finish line, it never gets across the finish line. If I go and explain to Bud, I say, listen, man, I frankly don't care. You know why? Because I'm getting my money. And he reinforces my mindset and thought processes when he tells me, no, you did the right thing getting paid the money up front because you never know how it's going to go with these TV producers. Fast forward, we are taken to Alaska. I'm going to say some things to you and explain quite a few things to you. The show was supposed to be pitched like I was in the Alaskan wilderness, but the location that I was brought to was nowhere near Alaska. It was Northern California, yes. Did it get cold? Absolutely. But it wasn't Alaska. And when I asked Chester about it, he said, well, you know, at the end of the day, it's television. You know, they have no clue of knowing where you are. I didn't like the plan, but I had already accepted the money, so I went along with it. The first compromise. And after that, it was compromise. We get to the location, we got the whole TV producer thing rolling. Me riding in the truck, cameras inside the truck, cameras on the windows. They want me to talk and anticipate what's going to happen. And I realize more than anything, he's asking me, a man who knows about survival, to be more of an actor than a survivalist. And so I'm just talking to the people, explaining to them my process, looking at the layout of the land, trying to decide where I'm going to be and what I'm going to do. When I get dropped off, all I have is my rifle, an axe, a thermal blanket, and a tarp, which quite frankly was more than enough for what I needed to do. So I head into the wilderness with the cameraman, Bud, right behind me, recording it the entire way. I also have a handheld camcorder for me to document my emotions and feelings. It takes me about 2 hours to find a suitable location. And the real challenge was there was a lake on the map. And I wanted to be close enough to the lake to where I can hike down there and get water. But also I didn't want to be too close because when it became cold and the lake snow effect kicked in, it would be horrendous. So I made camp 2.5 miles away from that lake. and I get clearing the land, cutting down trees, and building me a shelter. The shelter for the first night was 100% pure garbage, just enough to get me through the night. I got firewood, I have everything set up, and I'm positioned. The first night, it's cold, but it's nothing I've never felt before, and I'm fine. Over that first week, I am hustling and bustling, trying to make sure I have a firm structure. And by the time we get to the 4th day of that week, I have a structure. I have something built that can withstand cold weather. And more than that, I have an area enclosed to where I don't have to worry about predators coming in or anything like that. I'm really getting hungry and I turn my attention to food. And so now I'm going hunting. And to me, the easiest source of protein was wild birds. Now, when I was hiking into my location, I ran across a couple of wild turkeys. But more than anything, I noticed that there were quail everywhere. So the very first piece of protein I got was quail. That day I killed 5 of them, took them back, and started the process of cleaning and cooking them, and then decided that I was going to smoke some of the meat. So now I had my hunger needs met, and I needed to make sure I had enough water. Now, mind you, one of the things that I always carried with me, and it was non-negotiable, was a small canteen for water. My canteen could be put on a fire and it would boil water and everything would be fine, but I needed a larger source of water. So I set out to hollowing out a wood log that I could take down to the lake, get water, and carry it back. But mind you, it is a long walk to the lake, so I needed to make sure that when I got there and got water, I came back with enough. And that was just my plan for starters. My larger plan was that I was going to kill an animal, hollow out their stomach, and use their stomach to carry water back. Now, mind you, the entire time I'm out there, Benjamin is out there as well, and he's recording everything that I do. And I'll tell you, now listen, let me say this to you. The hardest part about this challenge was, as I was there hustling and bustling for everything, Benjamin had containers of water. He had everything that he needed. So the person right next to your camp had everything that they needed and everything that you needed. But technically, you were supposed to be out there on your own. Now, it was the second time that I went down to the lake to get water when I noticed something odd. And what I mean by something odd is, on the far side of the lake, it looked like a person was bending down, scooping up water and drinking it from their hands. It looked so much like a person that I waved my hands at them and screamed, "Hello." The figure looks up at me, turns, and walks back up into the woods. Now, to paint a picture for you, on that side of the lake, it's not flat land, it's a ridge where you walk straight up. And this person walks up that ridge like it's no problem. Me looking at that ridge that they walked up, I'm saying to myself, okay, dude, I could not do that at all. But nonetheless, now I'm scavenging around the lake to see what I can find. To make my life a little bit easier, I find one plastic bag, but it has a hole in it. But I can still make use of it. As I continue to scavenge, I come across an area where clearly people have been camping next to the lake, and I find an old antifreeze bottle. You know those big yellow antifreeze bottles? And I'm like, thank you, Jesus, this makes water carrying so much easier. So I fill it up with lake water and head on back to my camp. 2 days later, it's nighttime, probably 10 o'clock at night. That's the first time that both of us heard something weird. Because off in the distance, we start to hear this whooping sound. Whoop, 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 whoop. Now, pause right here and let me say this. I spent a lot of time in the wilderness, and I've been around Bigfoot, and I know what Bigfoot sounds like. That was Bigfoot. Now, typically, when I've been out and Bigfoot's been around, they haven't bothered me whatsoever. Honestly, they haven't. And so I didn't anticipate us having any problems whatsoever. Didn't scare me, didn't frighten me, nothing. But let me say this to you. When I finally went on a real hunt to get some real meat, all hell broke loose. Imagine the scene. I'm out hunting, walking along, when I find some wild hog tracks, wild pigs. And I'm saying to myself, man, if I can take me a deer, a turkey, or a pig, this would be absolutely phenomenal. So now I'm following the prints, stalking this pig, when I come upon this little clearing. And in the clearing is no pig, it's a deer. And I'm saying to myself, man, if I can take this deer, not only will this meat go a long way, but its bladder will go a long way, its stomach will go a long way, and its hide will go a very long way. So I take the shot and drop this deer, throw him on my shoulders, and I carry him back. When I get back to the camp, I go through the process of cleaning them and preparing them and getting everything ready. And then I have me a phenomenal meal. We're both happy and relaxed and chilling. Then the sun goes down, and no sooner than it's dark outside, these Bigfoot start to lose their mind. Now, I'm not sure if it was because they were hunting the same animal as I was, or if they were just pissed off because now I was taking real resources from the area. But man, when I tell you, they get the whooping, they get the howling, and trees get the falling over in the area. Then the grunting starts. And I'm not sure if you ever heard a Bigfoot grunt, but it's not really a grunt, it's more of a huff. And it's loud and it's absolutely terrifying. That bud comes from where he is and comes into my shelter, which is way more sturdy than a tent. This goes on for the entire night, and we feel like we were surrounded by these things. And the following morning, when the sun comes up, we both go out and take a look around, and there are prints all over the damn place. I'm talking about gigantic footprints. The stuff in his tent has been rummaged through. Stuff spewed all over the place. And the craziest thing about it was we didn't go to sleep. We were up, and we did not hear them rummaging in his tent. How they did that without us hearing it completely baffled us. Now, the next night, it only gets worse. And let me say this to you. I have listened to a lot of people do interviews where they talk about having Bigfoot encounters, and they are lying to you because they don't describe what these things do at all. Let me tell you what they do to you when they have you alone in the woods. They do run-bys. And I'm pretty sure you know what a drive-by is when somebody drive-bys a car and starts to shoot. They run by your camp. And it sounds like an elephant running past. Doom, 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 doom. Then they run from another direction. Doom, 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 doom. They do run-bys. And those run-bys throughout the night are the most terrifying thing that you will ever encounter. And the strangest, weirdest thing about the run-bys is they don't make any noise. They just run past, and you feel the ground shaking. Imagine you're sitting there in your shelter, and they are running triangles around the area you're in. It's not one of them, it's multiple running triangles. It gets to the point where Benjamin is so afraid that he wants to leave. And quite frankly, I'm scared out of my mind as well. So we get on the phone and we call Chester. And he tells Chester that he needs to pick us up. Now, mind you, we're supposed to be out here 40 days. We have been out here nowhere near 40 days. We are on like day 16, maybe day 17, and we're both ready to go. And Chester tells us that he's coming to get us. 1 day passes, no Chester. 2 days pass, nothing from Chester. On the third day, we call him back, and he finally answers the phone, and he says that he thought that we needed a few hours to think it over. And I'm telling him, listen, you son of a bitch, I don't need time to think anything over. There are monsters out here, and they're gonna kill us. If you don't get your ass up here and get us right now, if I make it out of here alive and I see you, I'm going to kill you. Then I hand the phone over to Bud, Benjamin, and Benjamin reiterates the exact same thing to him. Listen, Another entire day passes before he calls Benjamin back and tells him that he's at the extract point where we came in at. And so we leave. And when we get there, do you know that this man is angry? He calls himself being pissed off and upset because according to him, we blew his opportunity at a big TV show. And he said, I'm not paying you the rest of the money. My exact words to him was, Chester, you know what? You can fuck off. You can keep your money and you can fuck off all the way directly to hell. Story is a little bit hard for me to tell, mainly because I still work for this company and for the guy who got me this job. So I will give you some background information about me, but please, please, please understand that I cannot share everything with you. And for one moment, think about someone other than yourself and realize that I have a family to feed. Now, as you are aware, there are a few major railroad companies in America. Norfolk Southern, Canadian Pacific, KC Southern, and many more. But what most people don't realize is that the railroad companies were the original American monopolies. They were what Facebook, Google, and Twitter are today. But when it comes to sheer power and ruthlessness, nobody, and I mean nobody, compares to the railroad industry. I know this for a fact because I've worked for them for over 34 years. Criminals and cartels using trains to smuggle drugs and guns all over the United States. If I were to share with you some of the things that I've seen and been involved with, you would lose your shit. It would shatter the reality of what you believe to be true. I'm talking about things ranging from just dumb people pulling out on the tracks and their cars getting stuck, all the way up to nuclear warheads being stolen, moved across country, trains being bombed by fighter jets, and the news tells you that it was a train derailment. You guys have absolutely no clue the level of chicanery that goes on with our railroad system. But this particular series of events happened in 2016. I'm away from work on a 2-week vacation with my wife and my grandchildren. He says, hey, I need you to do us both a favor. Fly out tomorrow. They're looking for a train driver. It's an off-the-books operation, one-way trip. They fly you back home when you're done. The pay is $15,000. You keep 10, I keep 5, just for me bringing this to you. Now, remember, I told you, I've seen some things, done some things when it comes to this railroad. And this is exactly how I saw them. These smaller off-the-books deals, sometimes involving narcotics, other times off-the-book black operations. Remember, I told you I'd seen some things, and this is how I saw them. We go through the normal back and forth, how's your family, how's your kids, while I'm thinking and trying to decide if this is something I need to do. And during that conversation, it hits me. My wife, my beautiful wife, had just ran up our American Express bill. Why? Trying to help her idiot brother who can't keep a job under any circumstances. You see, him and his wife were in the process of losing their house. When my wife comes to me and says, babe, we really need to bail them out of this situation. My stance was a firm no. She and I went back and forth and I articulated to her, listen, babe, the only way people understand how to hold on to money is when they pay the consequences. As long as your brother doesn't pay any consequences for his actions, he will continue to spend money like a wild man. Him and his wife will continue to dig holes like this for themselves. So I'm not putting up a dime to bail them out. It was long story short, through a wild series of events, my wife calls their mortgage company, pays $8,000 to help them get a loan modification. Picture this, I'm standing there in the kitchen, phone to my head, listening to his voice through one ear, my mind replaying the original conversation I had with my wife where I told her no. And I tell him, listen, I'll do it. I could use the $10,000 to pay off this credit card debt that my wife has ran up with a stupid ass brother. So we agree. Get off the phone. Now I'm walking into the bedroom to pack my bag and explain to my wife where I'm about to go. That turns into another argument. This is supposed to be our vacation. Where are you going? Why are you going to do stuff? And I'm sitting there telling her, listen, honey, I'll be back in 2 days. It's all good. I just need you to chill for these 2 days by yourself. She's adamant about me not going. So I walk over to our file cabinet where we kept all our receipts and pull out the $8,000 American Express card bill, place it on the bed, and tell her, unless you're going to make the money to pay this $8,000 off or your brother's going to pay us back, I need to go do this job and take care of this bill. Now, if there's one thing I can tell you about my wife, she knows when she's won an argument and she knows when she's lost an argument. So she walks over to the dresser and starts taking out clothes to help me pack, and we don't say another word about it. The next morning, I'm on a flight headed to a town near the southern border. I get picked up in a black SUV, blindfolded, and driven for what seemed like about an hour or so. When we arrive and I'm finally escorted out of that SUV, I'm walked blindfolded for about a good 200 paces. Now, I know what you're thinking. What the fuck is going on? This dude can't be telling the truth. But believe me when I tell you, this is how it all goes down. I assumed as usual that they were taking precautions and they had compartmentalized the travel of this train to make sure that not one individual knew everything about what was going on. We're walking for a while, reach a point and stop. Now I can hear the train slowly moving in our direction, people talking. Next you hear what sounds like typical loading equipment, forklifts, and to this day my mind still struggles to completely comprehend everything I heard, but I know for a fact I heard somebody saying, hey, slowly, move slowly. Now lift it up, careful, slowly. I hear the brakes on the train as it comes to a complete stop. Then I'm walked to the left, and we stand there for another 15 minutes as I assume they continue to load the train. As I hear multiple people moving back and forth, but mostly one person talking, giving orders like, load that first. Good job, gentlemen, good job. One more, and we're done. Careful. Slowly. We don't want it waking up, slowly. And there was one point in time where that man with the commanding voice was extremely close. I could tell it was him, but I couldn't quite make out everything that was being said because he was talking in hushed tones. And a few minutes later, my blindfold is taking off, and I'm standing at the front of the train, handed an envelope, and told to get her moving. Looking back, I was only pulling 5 cars. Talk about a small load. Somebody had gone through a lot of trouble to make this happen. Now, on board the train, I open the envelope, and my instructions are very, very simple. Drive this train for 500 miles. Do not stop under any circumstances. Do not open any of the train cars under any circumstances. Do not allow anyone else to open the train cars under any circumstances. Inside, looking around the cabin where I was, I noticed several high-powered rifles, handguns. Honestly, a whole bunch of stuff was in there that I figured I didn't have a need of using or having at all. That's when this gentleman boards the train, introduces himself as Tom. He says, listen, I'm here to make sure everything for you goes all right. Let's get this train moving. Now, Tom, and I doubt seriously if this was his real name, Tom looked like he ate people for a living. You know how some men have that look in their eyes? Like there's this thin membrane holding back all the death, murder, and destruction that's inside of them. That's what Tom looked like. He wasn't particularly a big guy. No more than 6'2", 6'3", slender, well-defined muscles. But you can tell that he wasn't the guy that you wanted to play with. He looks at me and said, hey, let's get this train moving. But it wasn't until I put the train in motion and slowly started to pull off that I realized there was something different about this train. Now listen, every train has a pilot. And for those of you who don't understand what it is, a pilot is at the front of the train, and it's used to ensure that it can knock anything off the tracks that may cause the train to derail. Normally, the pilot is just flat. This pilot had been modified. It protruded outward on a 45-degree angle and had spikes on it and extended 20 feet out in front of the train. As we're moving along, I look at Tom and said, hey, this is a weird pilot on this train. Why does it have spikes on it? What were we expecting to see on our way to our destination? Tom just replies, listen, we haven't seen anything on this trip thus far, and I'm hoping we don't see anything moving forward. This is the last leg of the trip. Let's just get this done and get it over with so we can get home safely. Now the train is moving along. Everything is going smooth, and I'm trying to make small talk with Tom. So, where you from, Tom? His eyes were locked on the tracks up ahead of us. They dart to the left. He gives me this quick look, saying, you really don't need to know or want to know any of that information. I notice that he has a scar, and it runs between his pinky and his ring finger all the way up his wrist. And I said, well, Tom, okay, if we can't talk about where you're from, at least tell me the story of how you got that scar on your hand. Again, his eyes dart to the left, and he quickly says, those are claw marks. And jokingly, I reply, oh, I get it. You one of those guys that goes to Africa and does the big game hunting. Man, I never understood people who do stuff like that. Expecting him to bite on that line, he doesn't. He just stands there quietly staring at the tracks. It was right then and there that I realized that this guy wasn't going to freaking talk to me at all, so screw it. Let's just get this train where it needs to go, and I'm going to keep my fucking mouth closed. We had been riding along for about an hour and a half when we felt the first jolt. And by jolt, I mean something at the rear of the train had moved and transferred that force through every car all the way up to the locomotive. We both felt it. I look over at Tom, and he doesn't seem to be bothered by this one bit, but I am. I've been on trains my whole life, and I know the type of force that it takes in order to make something like that happen. And if we had cargo on board with that kind of force, it meant only one or two things. Either they had put some form of liquid inside of the train cars that as I pulled off, it started sloshing back and forth, and that perpetual back and forth movement had made it slide, and I was banging into either the front or the back of one of the train cars. Or they had loaded something or someone else inside of those train cars that was way more dangerous than I could ever imagine. I wouldn't call myself a conspiracy theorist because I've seen a lot of shit in my life. And I believe in everything. I believe that our government has men who can transform into the Hulk like on TV. I believe there's a fucking Superman. I believe in fucking Batman. I believe that the inspiration for all these different characters comes from people somewhere around the planet or in another universe that are really alive. So now with nothing else to do, my mind is racing, thinking, okay, what the fuck do they have in the back of this train? Now, jokingly, I say to Tom, man, with a train shifted like that, feel like y'all got some Jurassic Park type shit in the back of this train. But he never takes his eyes off the track ahead of us. We spend the next 30 minutes in silence. I'm looking down into my bag, digging around, trying to get me some bubble gum and some water, when I hear Tom say, did you see that? What was that? Quickly shifting my eyes up to the train tracks, I don't see anything. He tells me he just saw something dart across the track up ahead. And I gotta explain to you the look on this man's face. He had the look in his eyes like something or someone was there to actually kill him. So I try to explain to him, Tom, listen, when a train moves down a track through a lightly wooded area like this, the animals feel the vibration of the train, and it causes them to panic, and they dart back and forth across the track. I tell him I've been on jobs where confused deer would dart back and forth across the track, trying to figure out which direction to go into, until eventually they got hit. And I don't know why at this point I was trying to reassure him, but I was. Tom, it was probably nothing more than a deer. Over the next 30 miles, the terrain began to change. Originally, it was low-density forest, but as we moved further, the woods became more and more dense. Something that I really, really enjoy. Opening the window, letting some fresh air in. I love the smell of the woods, that cool breeze coming in. And that smell of nature, you know how it is when you're out in the woods. It's so much better than anything you experience living in the city. As I'm opening that window, we feel the train jolt again. Honestly, this time it's 3 times harder than it was originally. To me, it felt like the Incredible Hulk was in one of those train cars behind us, and he was fucking pissed off. Because of the noise that the train made, I couldn't hear any sounds, but I could tell by the look on Tom's face that he was getting concerned. Because he grabs one of the rifles, opens the door, and heads out the side of the train. Now, to be clear with you, I've been riding on trains my whole life, and that's some shit you just don't do. You don't go outside of a moving train under any circumstances. But he does it. Him making that decision immediately let me know that we wasn't transporting no fucking liquid fluids. We was transporting something that was extremely dangerous. Concerned for his well-being, I start to slow the train down. I walk over to the side where he was standing, peek my head out, and now I see him literally climbing up to the top of the moving train car. So I slow it down even more. My eyes are no longer on the track because I'm trying to figure out what the hell he's doing on top of the train. He's moved out of my eyesight when I hear this impact towards the front of the train. When I turn my head and look, all I see is blood on that pallet at the front of the train. So now I'm screaming, Tom, 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 trying to get his attention. Because normally when you hit something on a track and you're not sure exactly what it is, you slow the train down, stop, take a look, and make sure it wasn't an actual human being. But my instructions were specific. Do not stop this train under any circumstances. So for the next 10 minutes, the train is still moving along. I'm there panicking, freaking the fuck out, because I'm not sure what the hell I just hit. In my mind, I'm thinking, nah, it couldn't have been a person. No person's going to walk out in front of a train with this kind of pallet on the front of it. You would have to be freaking insane in order to do something like that. Finally, Tom climbs back inside the cabin with me. I tell him, listen, we hit something, and I don't know what the fuck it was. I was too busy looking back at you. I took my eyes off the tracks, and next thing you know, there's blood everywhere. Now, this was the first time that Tom had literally squared his body to mine, looked me straight in the eyes, and said, listen, I need you to get this train up to speed, and no matter what happens, no matter what you hear, no matter what you see, do not slow this train down. Do you understand? And I realized I had to look like a confused, scared child as I'm nodding my head, because he repeated it again. This is an order. Do not slow this train down again. No matter what I do or what you hear, do not slow this train down. It is way too dangerous if you slow it down. And it's at this point in time when he and I have this slight disagreement that leads to him putting a loaded pistol to my head. Because I simply say, Tom, I don't know if you know this, but I can't make this train go any faster than 65 miles an hour. In fact, I'm not supposed to go any faster than 59 miles per hour. And that's when this man pulls his gun from his holster, takes a step back, and points it directly at my head, saying, make the train go faster. You're not listening to me. Make the train go faster. So now I'm making the train go faster. Keep in mind, this is not my train. This is their train. So I look at him and tell him, you know what? Fuck it. If this bitch derails, at least both of us are going to fucking die together. So I start to bring the train up to speed faster. We move from 45 miles per hour to 55, from 55 to 60, from 60 to 65. And then the PTC system kicks in. He looks at me and says, why are we not going any faster? And I explain to him, Tom, somebody on your end did not disable the PTC system, which combined with the other systems limit the speed of the train. If you wanted this train to go any faster than this, then you guys should have consulted with one of us first, and we could have removed the systems, and we could go 150 miles per hour in this motherfucker, but we can't because the system is intact. And now I'm pissed the fuck off because he's standing there with a pistol pointed at my head, not realizing that I've been in the same situation before with way worse people than him. And the best way to get my fucking cooperation is not to put a gun to my head. So I tell him, Tom, the best way to get me to cooperate with you is not to put a gun to my head, but explain to me what the fuck is going on and why we need to remove this system. If you talk to me, maybe we can work together and get the issue resolved. But pointing a gun at my fucking head is not going to get you anywhere, because if you fucking shoot me, what happens to the train, Tom? How do you move the train if you put the bullet in my head, Tom? And you can tell by the look in this man's eyes that everything that he's accomplished in life, he's done it by brute force. He puts the gun down and he says, listen, we need to get this train moving faster and get to the rendezvous location because there are other parties interested in rescuing the cargo. So now I'm putting 2 and 2 together in my head thinking, okay, we got some kind of high value target on the train. And under those circumstances, there's no telling who or what number of people they're going to send to try and recover this high value target. Now, even though he just put his gun back in his holster, I feel more comfortable because at least now I have a clue as to what the fuck is going on. So I tell him, Tom, keep your eyes on the tracks as I go and try and disable the system. And the biggest problem that we had is whoever was on this train before me didn't disable the speed limiter. Now, moving towards one of the control boxes, I opened it up and realized that someone else had recently been inside. You can see where someone had already tried to tamper with the speed limiter. When I see Tom again grabbing a rifle and going outside of the train, and I'm thinking to myself, this motherfucker is psychotic. And I hope he gets his dumb ass on top of this train because I'm about to make it go 100 fucking miles an hour, and he falls to his fucking death. It takes me about 5 minutes to bypass the speed limiter. The only limitation to the speed of this train was the limits of the train itself. So now I'm bringing it up faster. We're going 75 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour. Somehow Tom's crazy ass is still outside of the train, and that's when I start to hear gunfire. And not like brrrr, automatic gunfire shots. Tom is on top of the train, and he's firing off these single shots. Pow! 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 But looking out, he's too far back for me to see exactly what he's shooting at. The train jolts again, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? So now I find myself opening the door to a moving train, holding on, leaning out, trying to see what the fuck is going on. And let me tell you, that was the first and the only time I stuck my whole body outside that train to take a look. Because running along the side of that train were 5 gigantic wolves running along trying to keep pace with the train. And when I say gigantic wolves, one of these things was the size of a mini Fiat. We're talking about big freaking wolves. Now, I'm standing there in shock, staring at the tracks, trying to figure out what the fuck have I got myself into, when Tom climbs back into the cabin like nothing strange or weird is going on. There was this awkward silence as I stood there thinking to myself, do I ask this man what he was shooting at, or do I just ignore the shit and pray that we get to where we're going? But I could not hold this question back. Tom, what the fuck are those gigantic wolves that are trying to run down this train? He looks at me and says, those are the interested parties that I was telling you about, and that is the reason why you cannot slow this train down. I tell him, listen, Tom, this is my job. I know what I'm doing. If we move any faster than this, we could have a serious problem on our hands. I try to tell him we won't be able to slow down at all if anything is laying across these tracks. We need to maintain this speed. Listen to me. For the rest of the duration of this trip, Tom continues to climb in and out of the cabin to the top of a train that is moving at this point in time 80 miles an hour and starts firing rounds at these wolves. Now listen to me. It was at this point in time that I was able to put all the pieces of the puzzle together. We weren't transporting any kind of dangerous fluid or liquids or any high-value target human being. We were transporting one of these wolves. And these things had to be super dangerous because the closer we got to our destination, I started to notice other men in the woods with rifles. And let me explain to you the actual destination that we got to. Imagine pulling up to a gigantic stone wall, machine guns on top, gates wide open, the train pulling in. This looked like some Nazi Germany type bullshit. Believe me, up until that point, I thought that we were still inside the United States of America. But based on what I was seeing, There's no way, absolutely no way, that type of shit was built inside of our country. Because if they built shit like that in the United States of America, then we have problems because the citizens don't know anything. When we arrive inside of this place, they close the gates. Time climbs back in, blindfolds me, and escorts me off of the train. Listen to this. They load me into a helicopter. And before the door closes, Tom says, "You did a wonderful job under the circumstances. And if we need your assistance, we will call upon you again." And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, motherfucker, you crazy. This is my last time ever doing any fucking thing like this. The helicopter takes off. We fly for a long time. Land, I'm put into another SUV. And when the hood is finally taken off my head, I'm back at the original airport where they picked me up at. I take the last flight home, get to the parking garage. I'm just sitting there in my truck. Cell phone rings. It's my friend who got me into this shit in the first place. He says, "Hey, I don't know what you did, but they sent us $35,000. I'm wiring everything to you except for my 5. And the next time one of these jobs come up, I'll get in contact with you again." Now, I realize there are going to be people who listen to the story and say, "Oh, this is bullshit. It's a lie." And that's fine with me. But I've told you everything that I can tell you while simultaneously telling you nothing at all. And if you can't read between the lines and get to the truth, then that's on you.
Do ghosts really exist? Are we alone? Is there life after death?
It looks like a giant ape with a man's face.
We've done some testing to determine if it is a synthesizer or not. It's starting to come at me.
Hey folks, this is Sean Graham with Chasing the Truth, straight from the heart of the Appalachian Mountains in southwest Virginia, dovetailed with the Kentucky and Tennessee borders. I bring you Chasing the Truth on the Dark Waters Radio Network. Go to IamDarkWaters.com and subscribe to get the awesome email alerts that allow you to be up to date on the new content and live shows in real time. So go over to IamDarkWaters.com. Plus, there's a new feature at the website. Dark Waters has a new chat room. So go over to IamDarkWaters.com so you can join in with the immersive entertainment from Chasing the Truth on Dark Waters Radio Network. Only way to get these real-time email alerts is go over to the website. I've said it enough. IamDarkWaters.com. Now, today, I'm going to share with you a open lines live radio chat that I had. And it was a little bit of a slow night. Won't lie to you. Up until a gentleman called. His name's Connor. Now, folks, if you've ever listened to any of Dark Waters tell about certain ghost stories, certain Dogman stories and whatnot, some of those stories came directly from the testimony that this particular fellow has given to Dark Waters and myself, and now to the world, because he called in live on my show on Chasing the Truth. This fellow's name is Connor, and he has an extraordinary tales to tell about Dogman and a particular ghost encounter that he had. But wow. So what I want to do is just let you just dive into the call that I recorded with this fellow on, I think, April the 16th, if I remember correctly. So, folks, enjoy Chasing the Truth. Hey, welcome to Chasing the Truth. This is Sean. Who am I talking to?
Hey, this is Connor.
Hey. What's going on, Tom?
Not a whole lot. Was just enjoying the show.
Oh, great. What's going on, man? I heard you. Man, this fella right here has got some stories. This is Connor from the chat room. So,
what's going on, man? Not a whole lot.
No.
Been kind of quiet here lately. I hadn't had a whole lot of stuff going on, you know.
Hey,
That's the way I like it.
This is Connor from the chat, folks. If you're in the chat room at imdarkwaters.com, go over there and subscribe, get inside there and start talking amongst yourselves and ask any questions, whatever. Connor, he and I have talked on the phone several times. He's told me some stuff that just blows the top of my mind off.
That's the gentleman you told me about a while back, man.
Yeah, well, he called me the other day. I asked him to give me a call. He had a new update on what's going on. He was about ready to tell me a ghost story, and then something happened to our connection, and it was late at night. We'd been on the phone for a while. Hey, you got that story that you can tell us?
Well, you want to hear the ghost story?
Yeah, buddy. Let's hear that rascal.
Well, that's the only ghost I ever seen. I was about 13, and me and my buddy went down there and hang out with some older kids, and they was playing basketball and stuff, and my uncle had told me about this, cemetery and not to go up there. So I was asking them what the deal was with it, and they was like, well, it's haunted. It's a woman that's, the story was, there was a guy that he had raped this woman back years ago, and my granddaddy was part of the ones that hung him, and he had killed her, and so they was like, well, y'all don't want to go up there, and they kept messing with us about it, and y'all scared to go up there and this and that, so we you know how little kids get egged on. And we went up there at night, and the cemetery, it's a really old church that hadn't been in use in years.
Yeah.
And old rock foundation, and iron spooky looking gate around it. And, the cemetery is actually up in the holler behind it, and it kind of goes up and kind of curves around. And we got about halfway up that holler, and is a little bit of moonlight and a little bit of light off back of the church, and so you can see a little bit, to get around.
Yeah.
And we sat there, and this fog come down through the cemetery, and it was like a deep, thick fog. It just started easing down slowly through. Well, once it got we then went up and sat on the bank about halfway down the cemetery, so we kind of get a view of all of it since it was curved. And the fog started kind of like swirling.
All right.
And it was swirling kind of in opposite directions, in the middle, from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And this woman, and she was, the tombstones was probably, I don't know, 3 foot tall, whatever them old tombstones are.
Them old ones, yeah, man, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, real old cemetery, like Civil War type stuff.
Right.
And she wasn't walking, she was just kind of floating, and she come out to the front of the fog as the fog kind of swirled on both sides of her. And, we're looking at each other like, because we didn't expect to see nothing. We was just going to sit up there for a few hours just telling them we went up there. And as she come out the fog, she was pretty much kind of the center of us. And my buddy, he must have started getting worried or moving around or something, but he stepped on a twig, or he heard a snap behind me, and about that time she looked straight over at us, and you could clearly make out her dress, and she was barefooted, and you could see her hair, but it wasn't no color to it, it was just all pale. And as soon as she looked at it, she started raising her hand up, and I could already hear
like
him
waving.
And Excuse me?
Was it like she was waving or reaching? Was it like she was waving or reaching out for help, sir?
I didn't get that far, to tell you the truth.
I don't blame you. I wouldn't have either.
When she turned to look, my buddy was already running. I could hear the brush cracking as he was going, and it was thick. It was, them old green briars and vines, and it was some thick stuff. And just as her arm started up, that was all I need to see, and I bolted in behind him, and we sprinted all the way to I'd say it was about a mile. We went over top of the ridge and down in another holler and followed it down to the road and into the railroad tracks and ran all the way back to his house. And the older kids would hang out and drink beer and stuff in the shed in behind his house. And we went busting in there and, couldn't hardly talk from running and being, freaked out. And, and they all looked and they was like, "You saw her, didn't you?" And all we could do is just shake our heads,
Oh, gee whiz, man.
And that was all the ghost I ever wanted to see. And anytime anybody says that's haunted, I was like, okay, I believe you. I don't need no part of that.
Well, Connor, you've told me a couple of crazy stories about what's happened over in your property. You feel like saying anything about that?
Well, I guess the initial part is the only thing I'm kind of leery of what started it all. You know what I mean? With the, I guess the first visitors, and all that would happen. But well, let's just say it was some kind of ABC agency that that was on my property, and I encountered them. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't quite sure what they wanted, or they wouldn't communicate with me. It was a messed up situation, and they were heavily armed, and I was heavily armed, and it's a wonder it didn't go bad right there. But after that, I had talked to DW, and he was like, "What else you got going on your property?" And I'm like, "Nothing really that I know of." And he asked me about, is there any like trees laid over, the odd stuff, that I've noticed. And I'd noticed where some trees had been pushed over, like across the old road beds behind my house. Mm-hmm. And it'd be like one tree over in the middle of the corner of the field pushed over.
Right.
And where wind wouldn't really do it, you know what I mean? And it'd be a healthy tree. I'd go up and look at the tree, and it wasn't no reason, it wouldn't rain where it got soft and fell over or nothing like that. And when the tree would be knocked over, it would be during a time, because I'd noticed the tree, and before that we hadn't had any weather or nothing that I could say, yeah, that may have done it. And so I was looking around the property, and I took my dog with me. I got a Arctic Thunder Wolf and German Shepherd mix. And,
his name's Jackson, isn't it?
Yeah, Jackson. And we were going around to, it's a couple 100 acres behind me that a guy owns. I got permission to be on all that, and a couple 100 acres over to the other side, and nobody lives on none of it, so I kind of look out after it. If I see anybody shouldn't be there, I run them off, or
right, run people come in hunting on you off. Yeah.
And
you must be relatively in the same part of the country as us, Sean and I.
Sean knows where I live.
He I know where he lives. He's basically in about the same region anyway.
Connor, get my contact information from Sean.
Okay, Connor.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead and finish your story, man. Continue.
Well, as we're going around, I noticed Jackson kind of stopped and sniffed, and he went right on over this particular tree, and he peed on it. And I'm kind of looking around for tracks or evidence of anybody being around after the initial thing I had going on, or just anything odd. Well, I'm kind of looking at the tree to see if, because he seemed a little interested in it when he's peeing on it, and I had to pee too, so I peed on the tree too. And he's on around the rest of the property and really didn't see anything other than a few odd trees had been pushed over, like on road beds and, stuff like that. Well, a couple nights later is, kind of when things started getting strange. I could hear footsteps running, and they was way faster than somebody could run. And it's pitch dark outside, and I'm in the woods. I live back up in the woods, so it's that I was odd. I hear them going by the house really fast, and it happened a couple times. And I went out with the gun and looked around, didn't see nothing. It kind of quit. And then over the next few nights, it kind of started ramping up. And it'd be more, running around and more. Well, they got to, I've got, I don't even know how many trucks, about 6 trucks sitting out there. And, all the way kind of around the house. You picture a classic redneck. Okay, I got trucks on block.
Oh, brother, don't feel. Hey, you preaching to the choir, brother. I'm with you.
Yeah, and well, I can hear as they run by, and I'm on the couch, so I'm, right there at the window, and but as they was running by, it was like somebody was taking the palm of their hand and smacking the side of my truck, and then around to the other truck, and then smacking my old van, and but what got me is how quick they was running, because I've got jumps that never were. You try to run through there in the daylight, you iffy. And
you don't think somebody? No, you've known it. If it was, never mind. Something popped into my head. I ain't gonna say it. We'll talk about it later.
All right, and so I'm kind of baffled about all this, and I done talked to DW because he asked me about the first experience, if anything weird, to call him, and I was like, man, I don't know what's going on out here. And we wasn't quite sure what it was, because I hadn't found any footprints. I got heavy orange clay and slate mix, all over my property. So, unless you an elephant and it's raining, it ain't gonna leave a footprint. And
right.
And if it rains heavy for a while, or you got snow for a while, I sent Sean a couple pictures of some footprints I did.
Yeah, man, that was about the size of your hand. One I remember.
Yeah, I'm 6'3". See, so you can imagine what size my hand is, and about from the tip of my finger to my thumb, stretched out, was about what size the paw prints were. And that, and I got a big old German Shepherd wolf mix. You know what I mean? And when they make his paws look little, I know it's something.
Yeah, that's making his paws look little. That sucker is big. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And so, that was kind of concerning, and I was losing sleep, and during this time, Jackson was like all of a sudden he would go slam off and go to the back bedroom and barking and growling out the window. And then he would move and he'd come in the living room and kind of look confused like he was listening and turn around and he'd go to the other end. And, you know, it was several spells like that. And in the middle of the night, you know, he'd done that. So we was both not getting very much sleep at this point. And so best I can figure is it was trying to bait me out the house from looking back on it, because the way it was going around and it knew, you know, smacking the trucks got a stir out of me, and I'd go get the gun and, you know, go try to figure out what was going on or, you know, what it was. And so I was getting ready to go to bed during this one night, and I was getting ready to lay down, and all of a sudden Jackson starts growling and looking out towards the window in the back bed in my bedroom, which kind of overlooks my driveway. And you know, I hadn't heard nothing, you know, it's been quiet that night, and I was kind of wore out anyway. I was ready to go to bed. And so I looked around, and the first flashlight I grabbed was one of them little LED, like single battery flashlights, you know.
Yeah.
And I got a whole bunch of flashlights. That's just the one that was next to my bed. And I shined it out towards the driveway. And it's not got a very good beam on it, you know what I mean? One little AA lights. And I started looking around, and I got eye shine. So I'm looking, and I growed up in the woods hunting, and you know what I mean? It's got fur on its butt. I didn't mess with it. And I could see the eyes, and they were like amber color, you know, like on Jurassic Park when they hold that little light up. I mean, hold the thing up and show you the mosquito in there.
Mm-hmm.
About that color, yellow looking, you know, amber. And I could see it moving, and I could see another pair behind it that was further off in the woods, and they never moved. Well, as I'm watching it come out towards me. And I'm focused trying to figure out what it is at this point, because it got this little ass light, and I got it zoomed into a point. So, you know, it ain't a very big circle shining at far. And it starts moving towards me. Well, the first thing it hit me is I ain't never had nothing wild come towards a light. You know what I mean? Maybe a deer every now and then that's just kind of wandering around or wander over to you, but, you know, nothing, you know, that comes to a light.
Right.
And so it starts coming in. It's really low at the ground. So I'm like, it's something small, you know, but the eyes are too big to be something small. And it come out, and I had a big oak tree there, and I got a 74 Ford van, and I had it parked there next to the tree out the edge of the driveway. Well, as it come around out of the tree, it was getting closer to me and coming out the brush and everything where I could see more of it with the light. And when it turned to go around that tree, I could see the side of it. And at first I thought it was some kind of cat, because the way it was moving, it was really low to the ground, and it was like you'd see a cougar or something, you know, stalking something, how they'll get down real low, but they're moving pretty smooth.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of looking, and the first thing I seen is it ain't a cat. You know, the ears and the face and all this, and I could tell it looked, the face and the head and the body structure was more like a fox than anything. It had a like a bigger nose, like a wider nose.
Yeah.
And the ears seemed a little bit large for it, or for what a fox would be that size. And it eased around that oak tree, and my van's parked right there, and it stopped. Well, I'm still like trying to figure this thing out, and it's about the color of a Siamese cat. You know how if you had to name a color, you'd say white, but it really ain't. You know, it would like fade into darker towards its feet, and you know, around its nose and face was a little bit darker, kind of like a Siamese cat would be. And it turned around and it stood up, and that's what really got me. And I'm looking at it like, whoa. And I'm trying to look at its face, you know, because I got this little light, and it's standing up. Best way I can describe the way it stood up is like a prairie dog. You know how they'll stand up with the top kind of curled in?
Yeah, man.
Hey.
I've seen them. Heck yeah,
Hey.
brother.
Hey, Tommy, let's let Connor tell this story. This is freaking interesting, man.
Well, it stood up, and I went out there. I called DW after I seen it, and I'm like, man, have you even? Because I'd never even heard of nothing that sounded like that. And at I don't know if at the time if he'd even heard anything like that, but there's a bunch of, or I've heard several stories since. Linda Godfrey actually, I found a picture that she had on one of her sites when she was doing the interview and sent it to DW, and it was pretty close to what I seen.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at it with this little light, and it's just standing there looking at me. And I looked at it, and I wasn't quite sure what to do, you know, and everybody says, "Oh, get a picture or get the gun and shoot it," and all that. I don't know if I'd say shock, but disbelief more than anything. Okay, it's standing in my yard.
Yeah.
And I looked at it for a little bit. I really couldn't think of what to do, basically. And I shut the light off. I set my shotgun up next to the bed, and I turned off all the lights, and I went to bed. And, you know, I was like, whatever that is, there's at least two of them out there. I don't know how many of them's out there.
Yeah, I was about to ask you about how many was out there.
Well, I seen two sets of eyes, and that's the most I've seen, you know, of them.
Yeah.
And the only other time I seen it was, I guess, a couple weeks later, because I had been putting up, I put up lights around, and and I'd move them from tree to tree to kind of mix things up. They had sensors and stuff on them, and I had them up maybe a week. I had 10 lights, you know, around the house, and 9 of them come up missing.
So they just totally disappeared.
Gone. I never found them. The only one that I got was the one that the batteries was dead in. It wouldn't work.
No.
And I still got it right now. And but I was like, well, you know, I'm not going to, if they're going to come up missing, I'm not going to keep buying lights and stuff. And you know. But
that'd get expensive. They're still in crap, man.
Yeah, they was good LED motion sensor lights. You know, I done spent a good bit of money on them.
Oh yeah.
And I done went. And after seeing that, the next day I went and bought a 7mm Magnum. You know, I was like, I got an AR and a Sega shotgun and some other stuff, but you know, I decided I just went and bought, and I deer hunted all my life. There's no need in a 7mm to really deer hunt with, not where I'm at.
Yeah.
Not anywhere on the East Coast. You know, a 308 or 30-30 or anything like that is plenty enough for deer hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually a little hard to find because there ain't too many people's got, you know, it's not like I'm out west where they hunt antelope and, you know, stuff like that for, you know, a mile away and stuff.
All right.
And, but the next time I seen it, things had done kind of quieted down. You know, all the running around, and every now and then I'd hear a few footsteps. And I was basically just trying to ignore them at this point. I was like, well, I kind of know what's out there, and, you know, I don't know what to really do about it. Who you call, you know? And,
yeah.
So I'm sitting here and I'm watching TV, and I got my tablet and I'm looking on Facebook. I buy and sell a lot of cars and stuff like that, so I'm always wheeling and dealing. So I'm sitting here and I'm kind of in between, during commercials, I kind of check and look through the marketplaces and all that. Well, as I'm doing that, I kind of catch a glimpse of something through my eye, in the corner of my eye, over at the living room window, and about the top of its nose up it was looking right in the window at me. Maybe 15 feet away.
Yeah.
And and I didn't have a light on outside, but the living room light inside was shining out through the window because I ain't got curtains or nothing. I'm in the woods, and but I could see it pretty clear. And when I seen it that time, I took the gun and went out on the porch because I hadn't been going out on the porch, and never heard nothing. Never heard it leave. Never heard nothing around. And
well, they mess anything? They mess with anything else on your property during these nights that you had encounters with them, besides lights?
Well, one of them got hung up I got an old bicycle laying in the weeds, like a girl's 10-speed that some chick I was dating had, and it's, but it done fell over years ago, and the weeds done growed up through it, and one night during, I guess I heard running. Well, it just so happened I was real close to the back porch light. I was going to the bathroom, so I heard the running, and I just flipped the light on.
Mm-hmm.
And evidently it just turned and bolted towards the woods at that point. And when it did, it stepped down inside. It got hung up in the bicycle. And yeah, Jackson, I see you. And he's coming over to say it right. And but when it stepped down in the bicycle, it kind of yelped and a little bit of a howl, like yelp, as it, and I could hear the weeds and stuff as it kind of yanked, and the bike kind of slammed around.
So this bike was out in the weeds. You couldn't see it easy.
Yeah, how something grows down in the weeds, and you try to pull it out where you can move it a little bit, but you ain't gonna really yank it up out of there.
Yeah, I've seen those things.
And evidently it stepped and got hung up toe or foot or whatever. I couldn't find any fur or blood or, nothing, no kind of evidence of that. But I could see where the bike, like you had reached down and you yanked it up about a foot and laid it back down, where it had been kind of slid over and moved.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I hadn't really messed with nothing. Things got quiet there for a long time, and I hadn't heard nothing. And back, what has it been, about two or 3 months ago? Because I hadn't been going out since all this started. I just have no need to go out after dark.
Right.
I just been staying in, and just hadn't been messing around outside. And that's unusual because I growed up in the woods and camped and all that. But these people want to see these things. Once you see one, especially in your yard, you don't want to go out there because you don't know what it is, basically, or what they're thinking or what they go, I don't have no idea. And why they want to mess with you or what they wanted or nothing. It's just, it's a confusing thing because like a bear, you can say, well, a bear does this, and a bear might get you, but it's very seldom. Most of the time they're sniffing around when getting you trash, and they see you, they're going to run.
Right.
I've had plenty of bear on my property, and, I'd see a 200-pound bear, and, hey, what are you doing, and he looks at you kind of funny, and then they run, but something like these things, you don't know what to think of them.
Oh, you said, how much do you think those two, well, you said you saw one right up close. How much would that thing weigh, you think?
Well, I don't know if these were smaller ones.
Yeah.
Because I went out there when I seen it next to my van. I went out there and took a tape measure and to about where it was standing. And because I got a bubble window on the side, so I had a pretty good reference point, and it's flat right there. And it was a little over 5 foot tall. And, and it wasn't heavy built, or it was pretty slender. I didn't notice it being like real muscular, like you hear a lot of, I guess reports or people tell, about them.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't really muscular. It wasn't the fur. I've heard a lot of people say the fur, and this might be just like a hound dog and a beagle. Both dogs, but they different dogs. But the fur looked real clean and soft, and it wasn't scary looking. I mean, if you looked at it, or if they was known and you seen one in the zoo, you'd probably think it was cute. It wasn't like a werewolf Van Helsing looking thing.
All right.
It looked more like a fox. But when it was standing up, it wasn't like like a real fox would have just stood up, all awkward looking or, trying to keep its balance or something like this. This thing just come up off the ground and stood up and was standing there comfortable. And it's just spooky looking.
I think if I remember correctly, that you mentioned they moved on all fours at one time, or at least one of them.
Yeah, and it was moving on all fours when I first seen it. When I went around a tree, it was down, and the way the movement and all looked, had its belly like right at the ground, but it moves like a cat. You seen a regular house cat stalk a mouse. How they'll get down and move real fluent, but they're right on the ground. It's basically how it was moving. It was like right on the ground, but it was moving fairly fast and just smooth. And it didn't look uncomfortable being with his belly down to the ground.
Right.
And things pretty much got quiet, and I hadn't had anything for a long time, and like I said, I hadn't been going out, and the way I kind of looked at it is I ain't messing with them. I hadn't tried to take any shots at them or nothing.
Yeah, that kind of shit outside your door. I'd kind of stay inside during the dark myself.
And they I think they know what a gun is, and I believe that they just decided I just wasn't worth messing with. You know, I mean, I don't know if they was more curious or what, but I think what started is when that tree must have been some kind of marker tree is the only thing I can figure. And when the dog peed on it, and then with a wolf, my wolf, you know, anything you do, you got to kind of show dominance over.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ways they do it is when they pee, a bigger wolf will pee higher on the tree to show he's dominant. So when he peed on the tree, I just went over and peed it way up on the tree and just let it run down. And I think that may have been like a marker tree or a scent tree, or I don't know, because the way he acted funny towards it, because he kind of stopped and went way out of his way to that tree and kind of sniffed it a minute and then peed on it, you know. So I think that, and the other activity I had on the property, I don't know what happened. You know, I don't know if they was hunting them things or what was going on with that, but that may have been part of the reason they was curious with me, because they may have thought I was involved with whatever that was. And yeah, it was strange.
Oh yeah.
The only other time I really been out after dark, a few weeks ago, my neighbor down here was having a cookout, and I'd been down there early, and I'd planned on coming on back, and he was like, "Oh, you might as well stay." His wife can really cook too, so had steaks and all that, and I'm like, "Well, all right." So I got a 30 carbine pistol, and I got a headlamp and a flashlight in my vehicle anyway.
Right.
So I can make it to the back door, okay. And I come in and put my headlamp on, got the flashlight out, got my 30 carbine out, and it's a pistol, semi-automatic. And I pull right up to the back door and get out, and as I'm starting up the steps, I hear something. I hear bark and movement, and over in behind my house, you know, I had huge oak trees all the way around, and so I'm like, what's the deal here, you know? And as it jumped from one tree to the next tree, and it was way up in the trees. And these are big oak trees, like 80, 90-foot tall oak trees. And but you couldn't see, the lights I had wasn't quite big enough to really see anything in the tree. And the skyline where they come up, there was a little bit of a moon, so I could see like the treetops.
Mm-hmm.
And when it jumped from one tree to the other tree, I could see the tree shake. And for something to shake a tree that big, you know, it had to be pretty good size. And I could hear the bark, you know, the bark ripped and all when it hit the other tree and left the first tree. And I got up the next morning, and some loggers hang out down here at the local store, you know, when they're hauling loads to the mill and stuff. And I talked to them and found the first loggers I could find that was convenient to come cut trees, and I had them cut 68 log trees. And you know, I didn't really want to do that, but that was once I realized they could be in the trees, and you know, I was done with that. So I had them thin down all the big trees.
Now, did you ever take any of those weapons you explained and shot at these things, or shot up in the air or anything to try to scare them off?
Well, I fired a couple shots in the air one time, and that's about it. And that was during when I'd had like several nights in a row, and I was losing sleep, and you know, still so stressed out during the day, I really couldn't sleep. And, you know, I heard the footsteps, and I walked down on the porch and kind of cussed a little bit, and, you know, told them to leave me the hell alone. And I had a slide fire on my Sega 12 with a 20-round mag, and I opened it up in the air. And it'll empty 20 rounds of double-aught buck pretty quick. And then I went on back in, and I didn't hear nothing else the rest of the night.
Didn't they mess with your TV antenna one night?
Nah, that when I seen them, when they left, or when that activity quit or really slowed down, the dog was acting different then. And he was like going up, and he wouldn't like, okay, there's something out there, and he was like, but he wasn't going off.
Mm-hmm.
So, and more whining. And you know, I didn't understand what was going on with that. And I've been messing with my antenna out here, and I don't have cable or anything. You know, I got a pole with a digital antenna on the top, and to move it around to get different channels or better channels, you know, you got to go out there and slide it around. Well, I had it out there right next to the window, and I come in here, and I'd been messing with it during the day because I'd moved it. And then the next day I'd mess with it some more because it, you know, getting the channels right. And I'm sitting here watching TV, and there ain't no wind or nothing. And all of a sudden the TV signal just goes off. And usually, like when the wind's blowing or it moves or whatever, you know, it'll kind of go out a little bit, or you're getting it coming in and out. It's just like turned and went out. And I was like, well, okay, I'm done. I'm just going to go to bed, because I wasn't going out there messing with it. You know, I just didn't quit going outside at night. Well, the next day I go out there, and, you know, this goes on for a couple nights. And I think I got it straightened away. And this is not one of them little light antenna poles. I work construction. I got a piece of scheduled pipe that's about 2-inch pipe. You know, it's like 30 foot long with my antenna on it. It's bright heavy, so the wind don't really blow it around or nothing. And I had marked on there where it was, so I, you know, figure out. And I'd put I was like, well, this thing's moving, and there ain't no way it should be moving. So I put a piece of reflector tape around it, and it goes up by that same window. I can about 13 feet from it, you know, where I could see the reflector tape. Well, as I'm watching, all of a sudden the TV starts going out, and I immediately look over there, and I can see it slowly turning. And so I'm like, something's moving it. You know, there ain't no. So I get up, and I try to look out the window with the flashlight, and I don't see anything, and mess around, you know, look around the windows and all that. The only thing that I can think of is I don't believe them other things really shove over trees and make them kind of markings. From what I understand and talking to DW and all that, so I'm thinking there's some Bigfoot in the area, and that's what had actually pushed the trees over, and they must have come back in the area and kind of run them other things off. And the other weird thing that happened is when this other thing was going on, Jackson, he wouldn't even go outside, you know, and he's a big, serious dog.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'd let him out, and, you know, even during the day, he didn't even hardly want to go off the porch far enough to use the bathroom, and then he went back in. And if I went out or was messing around outside or whatever, he'd be like kind of shoved right up against me watching. Well, he had quit doing that, and I could see him like kind of more relaxed and panting, and like he was pretty calm, you know, and he started going up in the woods and all. Well, there was several times that he would just stop mid-stride. I'd be out there working on one of my trucks or whatever. And he'd stop, and I'd see him lift his head up like he heard something. So I'd kind of stop and look up there. And then he'd take off. And I'd holler, and, you know, he wouldn't listen. He just got it. Well, he'd be gone for 20 minutes, half an hour. And then he'd come back just like he was happy as he could be, like he done hung out with his best buddy. And, you know, I don't have any explanation for that. I don't understand it. But
you got any neighbors he's cozy with?
Nah. Even my buddies come up here, he don't care for them. I mean, with that wolf in him, you know, he don't care if you pet him, sweet talk him, nothing. When you show up, if somebody new, he wants to walk around him with his hair stood up, and he wants to sniff them real good, and then he's done with them. You know, that's all. You know, my one buddy, he's 4 years old, and my one buddy's been around him his whole life, and he'll get happy when he sees him, and he'll come up to him and let him pet him a little bit, and then he's done with him. You know, he just don't really take to anybody else, or care to have anything to do with anybody else. So, but that was about the time where all activity around here quit. So I'm not. I did have a rock boat. His only other odd thing about that time had happened. You know, when Jackson was doing that and everything, it was at night.
Mm-hmm.
And well, my neighbor had got a new gun, and it stopped here, and then it was just a little after dark. And I heard him pull up out there, and I turned the porch light on, and he had parked right kind of at my back door anyway. So I went out there, and we was looking at his rifle on the hood of his truck, you know, under the porch light. And we was talking, and all of a sudden, I'd say maybe a softball-sized rock or a little bigger, you could hear it skipping through the trees, like somebody from about halfway up the ridge had really slung it. And so we both turned, as you can hear it coming through there, and then you could hear it thud and roll. And he was like, "What's that?" I said, "It sounded like a big rock." "What did it sound like to you?" He said, "That's what it sounded like." He said, "What the hell?" I was like, "Man, I don't know," you know. And he stood there and looked, and I stood there and looked, and, you know, hey, you tell your neighbor that some weird shit out there without anybody thinking you're crazy.
Yeah.
And
well, did you ever find that rock? Did you find that rock?
I went up there and looked, but it's rocks everywhere up to where it's kind of. They used to mine it back years ago, so it's a lot of that rapidly pulled out of the mines and kind of tossed everywhere. So it's big brownish looking rocks everywhere.
Okay. So tell me, you had all the trees cut down around your property. So did that stop the activity? How many?
Well, and I also I was going to Family Dollar and getting bleach.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And mixing it with ammonia.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of makes like a mustard gas. It's kind of chemically the same as mustard gas on a lower level. But I was mixing it in a garden sprayer and going around the property spraying trees. And I'd done that for a good while, and the people at the dollar store thought I was crazy, and they were buying gallons of bleach and ammonia. Spraying it, or they didn't know what I was doing with it, but like every week or so, I was in there buying several gallons each, and but I'd mix it up in there and spray it on the trees,
mm-hmm.
and that I think that helped. It made me feel better anyway. I figured if they come around, because it burned my eyes. You know what I mean? It's strong.
Yeah, I've accidentally mixed that crap up.
Yeah, so if you have, it don't take much, and you can really smell it, and it's a pretty bad odor. So I've done that for a good while, and like I say, then things kind of calmed down, and I hadn't had too much going on. It was. Well, the other night I told you about the deer.
Yeah, well, let's hear that story. That's something new. Have you told DW this one? Yeah.
No, I hadn't talked to him and told him about that.
Oh, well, if you don't mind sharing that one, that's a short and sweet one, but that's a good one.
Like I say, it's been probably about 2 months since I've had anything that stood out, and I was up to about maybe midnight. I went to bed. And I'd say I was in bed probably an hour or two, then fell asleep. Well, all of a sudden, I hear, and I've hunted enough that I know exactly what a deer sounds like when it's, in pain or caught up. And I grew up on a farm, so we've had to pull them out of barbed wire fences, and they get hung in stuff, or when you shoot one. Well, it was out there in the corner of my driveway. I could hear one just start squalling, and it wakes me up, wakes the dog up. He's growling, looking out the window, and so I got my shotgun right there, and my pants and shoes. Well, it didn't take me very long to put my shoes and pants on, and what I had thought is maybe it got hung up in a car rim, or something laying out there. It didn't got its leg hung.
Yeah,
it was in pain.
Like that bicycle out there in the weeds.
Yeah, something, and so I get my pants and stuff on, and by the time I get out on the porch, it's done moved up into the woods, and it's still squalling. And so I'm like, well, that's strange, and maybe a drug, whatever it's hung in up that far, and it's hung in the trees or some saplings or something like that, So I'm kind of debating what to do, because I really don't want to go up there, but I don't like seeing anything suffer either. And all of a sudden, it just quit. And never made another noise, never heard a kicking or nothing moving or anything. So I go on back to bed, and the next day I get up and I go up there, and Jackson's kind of acting a little bit funny in the way he's got his hair up and he's sniffing around and moving kind of slow and staying with me. And I go up there and look around, and other than some leaves disturbed, I didn't find any blood. Well, it rained. That was that Sunday I told you it rained.
Yeah.
It had poured down rain that night too after that.
Yeah, I remember that.
I mean, like torrential downpour after that. So I went up there to look anyway to see what I could see, and I couldn't find anything other than leaves were kind of messed up in a few places.
Wow, that is an impressive story. I can't. Does Jackson do any more crazy stuff in the middle of the night that's kind of got your attention, woke you up in the middle of the night, or anything like that? Or have you had any sightings during the day about what these, I guess, fox, dog, whatever it is?
Guys, I got a call.
Not really much going.
Oh, okay. I appreciate you, Tommy. I appreciate you coming on board there, buddy.
I'm sorry, I gotta get off here. It's 10, I gotta get laid out for tomorrow. Hey, Connor, man, get my contact info from Sean.
Well, take care, Tommy. I appreciate you coming on and telling some stories there.
You guys have a blessed weekend.
You
Everybody.
too, sir.
You too, buddy.
All right, God bless. Good night.
God bless, bud. All right. So anyway, okay. So yeah, back to what's going on with your dog in the middle of the night. Nothing, no strange activity or anything. He's waking you up in the middle of the night.
Nah, like I say, he's really smart, and he don't bark unless there's something out there. What the breed he is, they're not really barkers anyway. So he's pretty silent about stuff, and if he does bark, he definitely done seen something. And he don't just bark because he sees a squirrel out the window or something like that. If it's something that's not supposed to be there or whatever, is the only time he ever barks or does anything.
All right.
I mean, where I'm at, my driveway's I'd say a quarter mile long.
Mm-hmm.
And like if somebody starts up my driveway or whatever, he'll bark, and let me know, but he don't just he's pretty much a couple barks and starts pacing back and forth like, okay, we need to go check on this. Somebody's out there.
Oh yeah, that's the best kind of burglar alarm ever.
Yeah, and but yeah, it's like I say, I can't really explain none of that, and I wasn't trying to find an encounter or I never thought it where I'm at there'd be anything like that roaming around.
Nah.
And
well, you want to talk about anything? Well, you mentioned before to me, I can't even remember. You told me we talked about this stuff so much. Hey, do you want to talk anything about these men in black camo coming up on your property, or you want to leave that alone? That's up to you.
Well, I'll just give a gist of it. Like I say, the dog's usually pretty good on anything moving around or anything like that. So I'd seen him kind of up next to the window growling, and when I got up to go to the refrigerator out of my kitchen window towards the front of the house, I caught a glimpse of what looked like a LED light, like the little power on button or something. I could see like a light glow or something like that on.
Yeah.
Kind of down through the woods. And like I say, I buy and sell cars and stuff all the time, so I usually got something sitting next to the road, or way down to, like I say, my driveway's about a quarter mile long, so it's down at the end of the driveway. And so I kind of pay attention down that way anyway. And so as soon as I seen something moving up through there, I was like, and I got like several race cars and a bunch of Harleys and some other stuff too. So I got, a bunch of stuff sitting around I keep an eye on. That's the reason I got the big dog.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, well, I got them. So I grabbed my AR and didn't turn on any lights or nothing, and went out the back door real easy, told the dog to shut up and go lay down, and eased out the door and went down there and used kind of my trucks for cover as I was moving down that way.
Mm-hmm.
And got down there to intercept them, and I had the light on the front of the AR just as they was coming around the brush at the old road bed. I was getting ready to turn the light on, and about the time I could hear a little bit of movement on both sides of me, and I was surrounded. And I'd say it was at least 3 on both sides of me. And it was a little bit of a moon, but not really much where you could see anything, just kind of make out the shapes and,
yeah,
and a little bit of what it was, but I could immediately tell they were all dressed alike and, appeared to be like a military type uniforms. And they was big dudes. It wasn't little kids with playing a prank or nothing like that. They was just real big dudes in all black. So first thing that hit me was, okay, this is a SWAT team. I don't know what they want with me, or maybe they got the wrong house, or somebody got some information confused, or something.
Yeah, sounds like somebody was coming in to do a break in and arrest whoever's in the house kind of scenario.
Yeah, and so I immediately said, whoa, I'm not doing anything, and I grabbed the middle of the gun and I held it up over my head. And I was like waiting on them just to run in and snatch me and snag the gun, and they didn't. So it was kind of a standoff at that point, and they're not saying anything. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what y'all want or what you're doing here, but, I'll answer any questions you got, or, whatever you need, I'll feel free to cooperate here. I ain't done nothing.
All right.
I said, you're on my property. Y'all on my property in the middle of the night. So, I got a right to have a gun to check that out. You know what I mean? I still hadn't done nothing, even with the gun. Well, nobody would answer. Nobody would, communicate with me. So then I got all this going through my head, trying to figure out, well, okay, what's wrong here? Why won't they answer? And then I thought, well, maybe they'd have figured out they got the wrong address, or maybe they didn't get permission yet to do whatever they're going to do, or whatever. And so I'm like, okay, y'all don't want to talk to me, I'm going back in the house. And so I kept the gun above my head and slowly walked back to the driveway and went on back in the house. And then, I was, wasn't quite sure what to do over all that. I'm sitting in the house now, and I got this big old dog. I know if they kick my door in for any kind of reason, he's going to nail the first one that comes through the door.
Right.
And you didn't seen it on the news too many times. Family dog shot, or they're shooting beagles and stuff. You know what I mean? What are they gonna do when
something that big gets a hold of him or comes out of him
yeah,
anyway?
and
Yeah.
he's gonna get a hold to him. He ain't gonna play with them. They kick in the door. So, and then I was like, I'm gonna be defending the dog. I'm liable to get shot because, you know, it's just gonna go bad. They know I'm armed. You know, so I start watching out the window, and I see a little bit of movement every now and then, and a little bit of light. And so I go back out and try to make contact with them because I could tell about where they was in the woods. They didn't move around to the backside, and I'm assuming they was still around front. I don't know. You know, I just know I could see them from where I was at, you know, in the living room out the back.
Now,
I went out there and
did you have your lights on in the house, or did you turn those things off?
well, at that point, I had done turned on all the lights because I wanted them to clearly see me, and you know what I mean, that I wasn't doing nothing, and I'm just in the house.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't know what else to do. You know, I didn't want them to me be sitting there with AR in my lap, and you know what I mean. Okay, I'm waiting on you, kind of thing. Because I didn't know what they wanted or why they was here or anything. And so I went back out and tried to make contact with them. That didn't work out. I came back in, and you know, they was moving around. I started getting mad because I was like, okay, if it's law, they gotta tell me what they're doing. You know what I mean? They have to identify themselves. And so then I decided I was going to try to run one of them down. And I turned off all the lights and snuck back out the door again and tried to, you know, I see where I'd done that. I turned off all the lights and I eased around the house and waited. And I know my property pretty well, so I know you can't really get through this thick stuff running to get away from me. So I could probably head you off this way and all. And I couldn't catch them. You know, they kept running and, you know, trying to getting away basically.
Yeah.
And like I say, and at one point, when I come back in the house, I turned off all the lights. It was like a long, like laser beam type thing,
mm-hmm.
and I could see it, and I thought it was brake lights off my truck at first, and sitting in the backyard, and because all of a sudden, like on the far end, I could see lights coming through the back window, and then I could tell it was moving. Well, as it kind of went by, I didn't turn off all the lights, and I'm laying on the couch now because I don't know what to do. You know, who you call? Okay, I'm already assuming it's law enforcement, so you call police and tell them, look, your guys is out here, and, you know, I didn't know what to do. And, but I seen it's kind of like a scanner, as best I can describe it. It went down, and when it got to where I was, it was slowed down and went by, and then stopped and went by again, and then went by one more time and went on down the rest of the house. And so I'm laying here like, what's up now? You know,
mm-hmm.
what is that? And I've never heard of nothing like that. And so at that point, I made one more attempt to try to communicate or run them down, and it was two of them around on the front side. And I went to run them down, and because you go through like my house, and then there's a big patch of woods, and then there's a big field, and it runs all the way down to the main road. There's nothing but fields. There's nothing to get behind. There's nowhere to go. So I thought, well, okay, I'll try to run them down in that field. And so when they cleared the wood line and got into the field, they kind of veered to the left and towards my neighbor's driveway, which is a good ways away, but it's, you know, closer on that end. And a Crown Victoria come flying in, and they both jumped in that Crown Victoria and gone. And even the dude driving was in all in black, because I could see when the interior light turned on when they opened the door.
Yeah.
And so I could definitely see then that they were all in black and in a military looking outfits anyway. and they left out of there. And
what kind of weapons do these guys have on them? Did you make out what they were?
Nah, I really couldn't make out what kind of weapons they had. It appeared like they was carrying something, but I never really, and it's pretty dark, you know what I mean? And you know, even they never got around my porch lights anywhere near it where I could see any light off of my porch lights. And I kept turning them off so I could sneak out and try to confront one of them, you know, and figure out what was going on. Because at that point, it was like, well, if they wanted to shoot me, if it was somebody wanted to do that, they already had me, you know. They could have shot me at any point, either through the window or when they had me surrounded the first time. You know, I mean, they had me. You know, I wouldn't have been able to do anything. And so I didn't come to the conclusion that I didn't feel like I was in danger from them because they didn't have too many opportunities to do something if they wanted to.
Absolutely.
And, you know, so it was just
So,
and the next morning when I got up, I went to the state police office is the first place I went. And I went in there and spoke to the state police, the chief of police for the state troopers.
Yeah.
And, you know, told him, and I'm like, look, I don't know what's going on, but I've got armed people on my property in the middle of the night, and they won't identify themselves. And he was like, well, that's not procedure, or, you know, I was like, well, I understand, but I didn't know if something went wrong, and, you know, they didn't want to tell me they was there because they had the wrong place or, you know, something like that. And he's like, well, I'm not allowed to divulge any information on SWAT team activity or whatever, but we coordinate with the state and the government and, you know, all the agencies. You know, they let them know if they're going to be in an area. So he gets on his computer and he's typing away and he's looking and all. And he's like, well, like I say, I cannot tell you if we've got any activity in any area. You know, I can't tell you that. He said, that being said, he said, there's no, I looked you up and there's nothing that you're involved with or your name ain't on any of our radar. And I will tell you that we do not have anything going on in that area and haven't had anything going on in that area and have no plans on having anything in that area. Because I'm in the middle of nowhere, you know, basically.
Yeah.
So I thanked him, and I was still kind of mad over the whole situation. I'd done been up all night. And I told him, I said, well, look, you tell your guys the next one that won't answer me, I'm shooting. I said, you know, and he's like, you can't do that. I was like, look, I'm telling you, I'm in fear for my life at this point. I've got armed people that surrounded me and harassed me, you know, all night long. I said, I'm not putting up with this. I said, if it is somebody that you can talk to or whatever, I'm just telling you. I said, so if something happens in the future, I'm pretty much making a statement now of where I'm at. And, and he kind of looked at me and gave me a stern talking to a little bit about, no, you can't just shoot somebody because they're on your property. And I'm like, well, okay, but that's what I'm going to do. And I left there, and I drove to the...
well, let me ask one. Before you get too far, you hadn't slept all night that night, so this activity ended.
It was close to daylight when, and I don't know exactly when they left. I was just so wore out and couldn't do nothing. What do you do? I mean, I done tried to chase them. I done tried to talk to them. I didn't know who I could call.
Dang.
I didn't know what to do over all this.
All right.
And
what'd you do after you got?
Yeah.
And what'd you do after you get after?
I drove straight to the county sheriff's department, and I had to wait because they were in a meeting and all that. So I went in and spoke to the police chief and the captain both, and gave them the same spiel. And I was still kind of mad over it, and told them I just left the state trooper's office, and I'm just letting you know because I don't want any of the. I don't be responsible for shooting a deputy or, you know what I mean? I've got no ill will towards anyone, but I didn't know who it was, and or the reasons or what was going on, and I just knew that I ain't done nothing.
All right.
And so, as near as I can, or we're talking with DW and all, that for some reason they had some interaction with them things. And I don't know if it was a Bigfoot group, or I don't know if it was I don't even know what to call them other things. But, something, and then that's when the activity started, was immediately after that. So it was some kind of connection there.
Oh, so these men in black showed up before the activity of the foxes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I'm not sure if maybe they had killed a couple of the adults, and there was a couple smaller ones that was around, and I don't know. I don't know what the circumstances or what, I don't know. Not a lot of it makes sense. I tried to, think about everything logically and why and what's up and why here and why they wanted to mess with me. And, there's a lot of unanswered questions still.
Right. Now, your area where you're at, do you have any Bigfoot sightings or anything like that? Is it a common place to hear these things around there?
No, it's not common, but there has been some stories on the news from around the area of sightings, and that's not very far from me at all. I'd say an hour, 30 minutes to an hour to 3 different sightings from my house.
Okay. Oh, wow. I don't know what. So the last little bit was just a few days ago, right after, was it last Sunday night when this thing happened with the deer incident?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it'd been like a couple months since before then. But like I say, I basically just been ignoring them. I know it's not somebody walking because you can hear the footsteps. And I got oak trees or had oak trees all the way around me, so thick leaves, you can hear footsteps and make them out pretty good even at a distance. And, you can tell the stride of, somebody walking, and these are more of a chop, 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 chop kind of walk than more of a where somebody would be walking, a person.
Yeah, well, didn't you tell me that your property around your home and stuff was pretty grew up with a lot of weeds and briar patches and stuff?
Yeah, I work construction, and I was gone a whole lot. Sometimes I'd be gone a year on a job, or I've had this place close to about 20 some years, and but a lot of the times, like I moved in with this chick for a couple of years, and I'd go hit a job and be gone for a year on it, and 6 months here and back home for a little bit. So the property is really set a lot, dormant with nobody around.
All right.
And and I'm here kind of sporadically, is the way it's been in the past. And I've had I got a couple bulging discs and a pinched nerve, so I've been off for a while. So I've been pretty much here for the last, I'd say, close to 2 years. I've been pretty much around the house.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if they had come around before and I just hadn't been around, or what, but the ridge I'm on, at the very end of it, is an old Indian burial ground. The ridge probably runs about 5 miles maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's big fields on one side, and then the other side it's big company plants corn there, so it's a big industrial kind of cornfields kind of deal.
No, like for alcohol and stuff for that, and for the alcohol for ethanol. That's what I'm trying to.
Maybe, I'm not sure exactly
Okay.
what they use it for. But it runs all the way to the river,
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of if you come off of that ridge that's in behind my house, it points right into that old Indian burial ground and stuff.
Oh.
And like I said, in all the cornfields, there's piles of deer that cross, and there's a couple smaller, like wooded areas and all that, but the main cover was this big ridge. So I get a lot of bears come down through here because they'll come up that ridge
Right.
to get cover from feeding, and they'll come down the old logging roads. And one of the old logging roads comes right into my back door. And there's another one there's several more that's close that come down onto my property, but there's one that comes right into my back door. So if anything's traveling, they usually kind of hit them old logging roads, and it's probably a mining road from way back in. That's probably what that is. And things just kind of naturally travel down through it and end up right pretty much in my backyard, because I've had 4 bear killed right at the end of my big bear killed right at the end of my driveway, and a couple cubs. They were coming out of my driveway.
Okay. So where your yard is all growed up, and you're telling me about these fox, dogmen, whatever you want to call them, running through your yard and slapping the side of your van and stuff. Yeah, is that easy to do through the?
No, it wouldn't be easy to do in the daylight. Because I got stuff sitting around, and like I say, where I was gone, I'd get some construction materials or whatever they give you on the job, and I'd be working on this truck and have another set of rims laying next to it, and the phone would ring, and I'd go to this job, and it just set, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so and I've been pretty much single. I had one chick live with me for a while. She used to get after me about the yard, but she didn't last long. But the other ones, like I moved in with this chick for like 5 years, and lived in her house, and her yard was nice and clean and all, and I kept all my junk over here.
Yeah, so it's not easy. It's not easy to run through your yard during the daylight because it's all grown up and you got a lot of construction and vehicle parts and pieces and vehicles itself, right?
Yeah, I got all kinds of stuff. Like I say, I still got 6 trucks right now. And I got 5 Harleys. I got dune buggies, jet skis, 4-wheelers. I mean, it's stuff sitting everywhere.
It sounds like you got a little used car parking lot going on there.
Yeah, like I say, I'm making a lot of money working construction. If I come back and I wanted to buy it, I had the money to buy it. And being single, I ain't had nobody tell me I couldn't buy it. So
there you go.
The dog, the dog don't care. He just gets some extra ET on.
Oh, jeez, man. So how are you still doing that Clorox and mix that you were telling us about? Are you still spraying that around your property?
Well, I kind of slacked off on that. Other than getting expensive and being a pain, in the activity, pretty much just gradually just went away until, like I say, every now and then I'll have something happen, but it was mainly at night. I didn't really have any. Every now and then during the day, I could hear something run on the ridge, but with all that other stuff, I wasn't sure if it was just something running or if I'm hearing stuff. I knew I heard it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell what it is at a distance up further on the ridge. But the dog calmed down, and I kind of used him as a gauge. Because, he, just the way he acted, I knew something was definitely wrong. He hadn't gone off like that, and he just wouldn't quit barking. And,
Daggum. Yeah, man, I could. Well, when I had my dog, he knew, according to my girlfriend at the time, he knew when I was coming home 15, 20 minutes before I got in through the door. So, anybody knows anybody knows about a dog, they can definitely sense things around the house and around the property.
He knows my truck, and like I say, the power guys come up here not long ago to change out the meter box, and I don't ever lock my back door because I got the big dog in the house, and he knows how to open the door. He just grab a doorknob and open it up and go outside. And,
that's crazy.
Yeah, and when he wants to come back in, he'll shut the door behind him.
Well, okay, there. I didn't know he was that smart.
Oh, yeah, he's real smart. But the power guys was up here going to change the meter out, and the meter's like right behind my house.
Mm-hmm.
And they got out the truck and all, and he opened up the door and run them back up in the truck, and they called me, and it was like, is this a dog bite? Well, they told me who they was. It was from a power company. And I was like, he's in the house. They're like, no, he ain't. He come after us and run something to the truck, and he's sitting here right now growling at us. And I was on the way back from the store. I went to get me a sandwich, and so I'll be there in a couple minutes. And they said when I started up the driveway, his ears went up, and he looked down, and he couldn't see me at that point. And he went back up in, and he shut the door behind him. And they was sitting in the truck laughing because they was pulling around far enough that they could actually see him go in the house and grab a door and shut it behind him.
Right.
And so I was like, so I opened up the door, and he's sitting there like, no, I ain't doing nothing. I've been in the house, and I chewed him out a little bit, and took him outside and let him meet the fire people, and I had them make extra anytime they were in the area. I had them call me and drive up and So they got he knows their truck now, and he won't bother them now.
Right.
But
Connor, I appreciate you, buddy, calling in and telling that story. That, folks, if you ever heard anything that has to do with a Dogman or cryptid story, this story that Connor shared with us tonight, folks, you ain't going to hear any better. You just definitely haven't. He's told me a little bit more, but he's pretty much nailed it with the stories that he's told. He never varied from what he's told me. I don't think you've added anything new other than a couple nights ago when that deer story happened. But wow.
Yeah, that just happened.
Yeah, that just happened.
Yeah.
Well,
like I say, it is what it is. I can't really explain it, and like I say, these people want to see these things. There's some people in the chat, I'd love to see one and all that. Well, it's not like going out and seeing anything you're looking for, like a bear or whatever, because it's something that and even if you have a good encounter and see one, your mind just don't process it right because you don't know what it is and don't know, how to really take it. And yeah, I normally don't have no nightmares or anything like that, but I did over this and it wasn't the fact that I know people's had a lot worse interactions and stuff going on, but just the stuff I've had with them, it's just really unnerving. And, it's just, I don't know what to tell somebody. And if you was to run across something like a Van Helsing one, I don't know how you would. I just know seeing something that's 5 foot tall and fairly cute will mess you up when you don't know what it is.
So you think? So you definitely think there is bigger versions of that thing out there in your woods at that time?
I don't know. Like I say, all I can tell you is what I saw.
Yeah.
And as far as, like I say, I don't know if they were young ones. I don't know if it was full size. I really couldn't answer that.
Well, I don't know how much time you got left to talk or anything, but I do remember you telling me that you heard some crazy like chatter or something that wasn't anything that you heard.
That one time I heard lightly, it was some mumbling and the clicking noises, like it sounded like it was making it with their mouth.
Right.
And that was about the time that these things quit coming around, and I felt like something else might have been moved in, just from the way the dog was acting, and the feeling I had. I guess basically, it just felt different, But I was coming out the bathroom near my back door, and I heard a limb snap, like somebody had stepped on a good sized limb and broke it. And so I didn't turn on the light or anything. I just kind of was trying to listen to the door. And I heard, and it was really hard to hear, but I could hear like a drunk samurai or drunk Chinese talking, mumbling fast. It was about of a few, a little bit. And then it was like, and the other noise was over from it, and it was a clicking type noise, like you was making a clicking noise with your mouth or something.
Yeah.
And then the other one made like a grunt, and then I didn't hear nothing else. I don't know really what the
hell did it sound like? Did it sound human at all? What little bit that you did hear, other than the grunts and the clicking?
It was faster, like when people talk, they talk at a pace. This was like, you know, like a faster, kind of like jumbling.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
Together and stuff. And they were trying to be quiet too. They wasn't really like being loud, communicating. It was like you was hunkered down, trying to whisper to your buddy over a few feet from you.
Oh,
You know, you're not making very much noise, but like I say, I'm up here in the woods, it's dead quiet. There ain't no noises.
So what did Jackson, your dog, say? Did the dog do anything with it, or did he act like he heard these noises or anything?
Well, he come up there and he was standing at the door and he was turning his head sideways and had his ears up and he's looking at me and I'm looking at him and and I didn't motion for him to be quiet. And so he's looking and ain't sure what's going on, and I'm looking, and you can see him kind of leaning his head forward, trying to listen better, and then didn't hear nothing else after that. So,
dang, man!
You know,
wow. I don't know if I want to encounter something like that. That will probably get me all messed up and having nightmares myself. Jeez.
And like I say, and I've never seen nothing else but them at the other one twice. And, you know, so I'm not sure. And like I say, I've looked for footprints and all, but it's hard orange clay with slate, mixed with slate.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically like concrete most of the time.
Yeah.
You know, you can't dig in it with a shovel.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Up until it gets, you have almost like a flood, and then it'll turn into something you lose your shoe in.
Yep. And so, you know, I'm not quite sure
what the heck's going on. Wow. Anybody around your house, your neighbors or anybody at all, say they've seen anything like that? Those foxes?
The only the guy that owns all the property behind me, I went and asked him about it, and I was like, "Have you seen anything you ain't sure what it was, or because I know he's got a few game cameras set up there."